Chapter 3165. What? Daoist Xiao was stunned. He looked at Yuanya, who was already half a step away from the mountain path and was now as stunned as a clay statue. He really didn't understand what Mu Chufan meant. However, although he didn't understand the whole story, he was sure that these villagers didn't come to him to bring him bad luck. On the contrary, they came to thank him. When the woman who still looked a little weak and the two children knelt in front of him again, Daoist Xiao finally made up his mind. He calmly went forward and helped the woman up. He smiled and said, "Since you've recovered, don't be in such a hurry to come to Jianshao Temple. It's not too late to come back when you're full of qi and blood. Moreover, it's already late today. The Jiangshao mountain is very cold, and the mountain is very big. You'd better go back quickly. Otherwise, wouldn't the elixir be wasted?" Yes, I know," the woman said gratefully. "If I can't thank Jinren Xiao in person, how can I rest peacefully? When I kneel in front of Jinren Xiao, I'll go back immediately." "Haha, you've already done that. You'd better go back quickly, little lady," Daoist Xiao said with a smile. Mu Chufan looked up at the Jianshao temple in the night and whispered to the woman, "My wife, this place is still far from Jinren Xiao's statue. Do you want me to carry you up?" Daoist Xiao was confused again. At the same time, his face was a little hot. He thought that the Jinren Xiao that Mu Chufan and his wife were talking about was him. Who would have thought that it was the broken statue in the Jianshao temple? Mu Chufan saw his wife nodding. He used his hand to touch his chest and took out a small silver coin. He handed it to Daoist Xiao and said respectfully, "Jinren Xiao, this is a small token of my gratitude. Please accept it. Last night, I saw that Jinren Xiao's statue didn't have any incense or candles. This is a small token of my appreciation. Please prepare incense and candles. You must worship Jinren Xiao's statue for 49 days. Of course. I don't need your reminder," Daoist Xiao immediately replied. "I'll go back and prepare now. Kindly Lord and Miss, please come up soon." At that moment, the old man who saw Daoist Xiao the earliest also came to his senses and muttered, "So, little Mu Zi was talking about the statue in the Temple of River and Tide. Not this little Daoist. Yeah, hurry up and go." How could Daoist Xiao care whether he was Daoist Xiao or the clay idol? The silver had already fallen into his hands, so he hurriedly called out, "Hurry up and light all the incense sticks for Daoist Xiao." But Yuanya was confused. He did not know what Daoist Xiao meant. "Yuanya, go light all the incense sticks and candles in the monastery," Xiao Hua hurriedly called out. "Mu Shan wants to burn incense for the immortals enshrined in the monastery." "Yes, master." Yuanya finally understood. His figure rose from the bushes. His entire body was like a monkey outside the mountain path. He quickly rushed up the Temple of River and Tide. When Xiao Hua accompanied Daoist Xiao back to the Temple of River and Tide through the mountain path made way by the villagers of General Ridge, the entire Temple of River and Tide was already crowded with devout men and women. In the main hall, there were also several anxious, kind men and women who had already knelt down in front of the worn-out statue. And on the altar in front of the statue, there were 4 rare, thick incense sticks. The flickering light of the incense sticks shone on the worn-out clay idol. It looked very funny. Boundless Taoist master Daoist Xiao stepped to the main hall of the Temple of River and Tide and looked at the situation in the hall. His expression changed unconsciously. He opened his mouth and wanted to blow out 2 of the incense sticks. Looking at the people who had already surrounded the main hall, he endured the pain in his heart and did not dare to do it. However, Daoist Xiao still glared fiercely at Yuanya and pretended to say a few words. Yuanya blinked his eyes and followed Daoist Xiao's gaze to look at the altar that was slightly lit up. He suddenly understood and immediately squeezed out from the crowd. When he came back, he was holding a small wooden box that was 1 foot in size and 2 feet in height. There were 3 big words written on it, "Merit Box." Yuanya squeezed through the crowd again with great effort. His vigorous figure in the forest was also somewhat strenuous at this moment. It was probably because the villagers of General Ridge were really passionate. The fanaticism and devotion in their eyes filled the entire main hall. Looking at the worn-out statue again, Taoist Xiao could not help but feel a tinge of regret in his heart. With his swoosh, he swung the horsetail whisk that he had unknowingly taken out and cleared his throat. Cough, cough. Once they heard that Taoist Xiao was about to speak, the clamor of the crowd immediately went far away. They all stood respectfully at the front and raised their necks to listen to Taoist Xiao's explanation. I have been in Longevity Town for many years and have always lived in this Jiangqiao temple. Taoist Xiao's eyes flashed with divine light, appearing unusually deep. Then he took a deep breath. I have already traveled to many places in the hidden immortal mainland. Why did I stay here for so long when I came to Longevity Town? Actually, I had already vaguely mentioned that this Jiangqiao temple was not an ordinary Taoist temple when I started to cast spells to save all living beings a few years ago. When I first stepped into the temple, I had an extremely strong feeling. This Jiangqiao temple is the place where the immortal resides. This Longevity Town is also a place favored by the Taoist ancestor. Speaking of this, Taoist Xiao turned his head to look at the worn-out statue. His expression changed again, and he sighed. Although this is a worn-out statue, in Ai's eyes, he is also a divine person who knows the heavens and the earth. This divine person is guarding Liao Jiang here, once again using my Taoist magic to protect Longevity Town's safety. I made a grand vow that day to restore the divine person in Ai's heart and reconstruct his golden body. I want to let him get the incense he deserves. Unfortunately, I am only a small Taoist cultivator, far from having the magic of this divine person. Perhaps some of you have already seen Ai in Longevity Town. Ai's situation, just look at the entire Jiangqiao temple and you will know. Jiangqiao temple has not changed much since I came several years ago. I am ashamed to face the Taoist ancestor. I am ashamed to face the divine person in Ai's heart. Seeing that Taoist Xiao's face was filled with sorrow, in the blink of an eye, Taoist Xiao pointed at Mu Chufan's family of four squeezing at the front of the crowd and said passionately again. However, just when I was somewhat disheartened, this divine person finally appeared and gave us a miracle at the end of the world. I finally understand why I have fate with this Jiangqiao temple. It turns out that this divine person is Taoist Xiao, the famous Taoist ancestor Taoist Xiao. I am ashamed. I have always regarded Taoist Xiao as Ai's cultivation goal. Ai's surname is also Xiao, so I arrogantly called myself Taoist Xiao. But how can Ai's cultivation be compared to the real Taoist Xiao? Now, the miracle of Mu Shanju's family is not only a revelation from Taoist Xiao to Ai, but also a warning to Ai. It is also a blessing for Longevity Town. From now on, Taoist Xiao will give us more miracles. This kind of miracle is real and real. It is completely different from the fake and pretentious Xiao Jin Temple. Chapter 3166. Hee, fellow Taoist Chong. What's wrong? Is your Tarsus locket useless? The last cultivator who had been silent all this time mocked in a hoarse voice. Strange, this kid's Taoist robe is a little strange. Fellow Taoist Chong was slightly embarrassed. Ha, that's good. Gongqinggu laughed shrilly. The stranger it is, the more it means that there's something good in the ring. Hearing this, the other cultivators became excited. They had only heard of storage rings, but this was the first time they had seen one. In fact, they knew that Zhang Xiaohua's appearance in the demon-resisting valley was a little strange. Everyone was blinded by greed, but no one cared about the result of people dying for wealth and birds dying for food, because they had placed their hopes on luck. How about this? Since this kid is unwilling to cooperate, let's kill him first. As for the ring, fellow Taoist Qi can have it. His cultivation is slightly weaker than ours. We can rest assured if he takes it. Fellow Taoist Chong said after thinking for a while. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He knew this was bad, and his hands and feet began to struggle again. This so-called Tarsus locket was very strange. It wrapped tightly around Zhang Xiaohua's body like a fishing net, confining the true qi in his meridians and preventing it from flowing. I have some ideas. After struggling for a while, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized that although the Tarsus locket confined his true qi, it did not confine his strength. When he exerted his strength, he could even open the Tarsus locket a little. Maybe I can break it if I use all my strength? Zhang Xiaohua muttered to himself. Just as he was about to take the risk and try, he heard the hoarse voice again. Fellow Taoist Chong, what are you talking about? I don't have any grudges with you. Why did you bring this disaster to I? Hee. Fellow Taoist Chi, don't blame me. Isn't this the only way? The others are just worried about it. Fellow Taoist Chong said with a smile. Don't, Chi Dao said, waving his hand dismissively. Whoever wants to take it can have it. I only want my share. Well, fellow Taoist Yin thought for a moment and looked at the three people around the ring, as well as Zhang Xiaohua, who was next to the ring. He had no choice but to say, Little guy, let's negotiate. Zhang Xiaohua stopped struggling and sneered. What's there to discuss? You only need to swear that you won't tell anyone about what happened here. I will make the decision to let you go. What do you think? Hee, my storage ring is gone. How am I going to explain this to the sect's headmaster? Zhang Xiaohua sneered. That's your problem. What do you think is more important, dying now or being punished by the sect leader in the future? Fellow Taoist, I also sneered and said, if it weren't for the fact that we were holding each other back, do you think I would be so kind? Get rid of this Tarsus lock. Zhang Xiaohua replied. That's easy. Fellow Taoist Yun pointed with his finger, and the Tarsus lock was released. It flew into fellow Taoist Yun's hand and disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua moved her arms and legs, but she didn't find anything unusual. She scratched her chin with her fingers and still refused to take the ring. She asked, if I take out the things in the ring and you divide the things and change your mind, what should I do? Why don't you make a hard oath too? Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist, she laughed and said, you little kid, you are really impudent. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Although we are holding each other back and don't dare to take the ring without permission, we can't let you lead us by the nose. If you don't take it now, I will take it now. You still want us to make a hard oath? Are you crazy? Good, fellow Taoist Chi, just take it. Let's find a place to divide this thing quickly, Gan Xinggu said with a smile. Okay, Zhang Xiaohua heard that and said quickly, I'll take it, but you must, it's too late. I'm not happy. I'll take it myself. Fellow Taoist Chi's personality was a little extreme. He waved his hand, and the ring flew into his hand. Zhang Xiaohua was in a bad mood and scolded herself for making a fool of herself. However, looking at fellow Taoist Yun's faint smile, she knew that even if she escaped now, these people would definitely hunt her down and not let her live after dividing the rings. She should know this from the way they dealt with Fairy Fei Ying. However, hiding for a while was still a good thing. What should I do? Zhang Xiaohua was anxious, and her eyes looked into the darkness. Right at this moment, a powerful divine sense swept over without any hesitation. Gan Xinggu and the others' divine senses were far stronger than Zhang Xiaohua's. Before Zhang Xiaohua could react, fellow Taoist Yun and the others' expressions changed. Golden Core Cultivator? Fellow Taoist Qi cried out in shock. Then, without another word, he activated the dermic power under his feet. His body shone brightly, and he immediately fled into the distance. Even fellow Taoist Qi, who had the lowest cultivation, had such a reaction. What else could the others say? When fellow Taoist Qi cried out in shock, the other three people were one step ahead. Their figures were much faster than when they came. Each of them picked a direction that they thought was safe and flew far away. This divine sense. That strong divine sense swept over Zhang Xiaohua and the four people who fled without any hesitation. Zhang Xiaohua immediately felt that this divine sense was cold, strong, and contemptuous. What surprised Zhang Xiaohua the most was that this divine sense was actually somewhat familiar. How long had he been here? How many people had he seen just now? Therefore, when he raised his eyes and wanted to look in the direction where the divine sense swept over, an extremely fast sword light appeared in front of him. That sword light belonged to the person who sent him out of the demon-resisting valley. Qiu Feng. Seeing a familiar person, Zhang Xiaohua was not only not happy, but her heart turned cold. He asked himself, he definitely did not have a proud background. He definitely did not have the bloodline of the Alliance Master of the Immortal Alliance that Feng Shu mentioned. He also did not believe that he had any peerless charm that was unforgettable. He did not want any future prospects to follow behind him. Since he did not have any peerless charm, then Qiu Feng's purpose was thought-provoking. After seeing the faces of Fairy Fei Ying, Gan Qinggu, fellow Taoist Yun, and fellow Taoist Qi, Zhang Xiaohua would not be so naive to think that Qiu Feng was here to help others. Maybe I met him by chance? Zhang Xiaohua had the last bit of hope in her heart. She put on a smile and cupped her hands, saying, "Senior." However, Qiu Feng ignored her. His face was solemn, and the pride in his eyes were completely different from his modesty in the demon-resisting valley. Qiu Feng appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. He glanced at the storage ring floating in front of Zhang Xiaohua and took it with a wave of his hand. Then he patted his waist, and a strange-shaped magic treasure flew into the air. The top of this magic treasure was an oval ball with many small holes. The bottom was a twisted semicircle. Once it flew into the air, it emitted a crimson brilliance. Qiu Feng glanced coldly at Zhang Xiaohua and narrowed his eyes. He pointed at the magic treasure, and 4 crimson brilliances flew out from the small holes in the magic treasure. They also shot rapidly in 4 different directions. Those directions were where fellow Taoist Yun and the others had escaped. It only took a few moments for fellow Taoist Yun and the others to escape and for Qiu Feng to arrive. During this time, fellow Taoist Yun had already escaped thousands of feet away. His speed was quite fast. However, fellow Taoist Yun's nervous expression showed that he did not feel relieved at all after escaping far away. Sure enough, Qiu Feng's magic treasure was powerful. The crimson brilliance arrived first and approached fellow Taoist Yun's back in a few breaths' time. Fellow Taoist Yun sighed slightly and did not dare to be careless. He turned around and flew backward. At the same time, he pointed at the disc that had been shielding his head and protecting his body with the brilliance. He patted his waist with his other hand and took out a handful of talismans from his storage bag. He threw them out with a wave of his hand. A series of crackling sounds rang out as the talismans exploded. Rays of light appeared and blocked the path of the crimson light. Unexpectedly, the crimson light didn't stop in the slightest. Like a sharp arrow, it pierced through the rays of light and shot directly towards the disc in front of fellow Taoist Quang. Fellow Taoist Yin bit his lips slightly and took a deep breath. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence onto the disc. The disc flashed and instantly became much thicker, emitting a faint crimson brilliance. With a bang, the crimson brilliance hit the disc. Then, with a puff, the crimson brilliance pierced through a layer of animal skin, creating a fist-sized hole in the disc. The crimson brilliance then went straight for fellow Taoist Yun. Fellow Taoist Quang didn't expect that the disc would be so useless. He waved his hand, and the stick he took out from his storage pouch earlier struck towards the crimson light. Fellow Taoist Quang's small stick was also a very powerful magic tool. It had been used by fellow Taoist Quang, a Foundation establishment cultivator, to kill countless people. But today, he encountered Golden Core cultivators whose strength wasn't on the same level. Although Qiu Feng didn't directly charge forward and fought against 4 of them, fellow Taoist Quang was still no match for him. The crimson brilliance did not seem to care about the misty brilliance of the small stick and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth stirred up by the tip of the stick. It rushed forward and scattered the brilliance of the stick, approaching fellow Taoist Yun's protective true qi. Fellow Taoist Yun was shocked. He activated the magic power under his feet and quickly turned around, stabbing downwards. However, the crimson brilliance was even faster than him. Fellow Taoist Yun had just turned around when the brilliance pierced through his armpit. His protective true qi was only able to block it slightly before the brilliance pierced through. With an extremely soft sound, the crimson brilliance pierced through fellow Taoist Yun's heart. It was a 3-inch long, almost invisible crimson, black iron needle. As the profound iron needle pierced through fellow Taoist Kuang's chest, fellow Taoist Kuang fell headfirst from the flying sword like a falling leaf. The profound iron needle spun in the air and flew back to the sword. Chapter 3167. Taoist Master Xiao could not help but point the spearhead at the Shao Jin Temple. However, just as he opened his mouth, he realized that some of the villagers at the back of the crowd had disdain and disgust in their eyes. He immediately became alert and flung the horsetail whisk in his hand to cover it up. He smiled faintly and said, "Of course, the cultivation of Taoism is different from that of Buddhism. It's useless for I to say more here. Let's wait until all of you widen your eyes and take a good look. Let's see who's the real one." "Oh, I've said too much again. Good Lord Mu, please tell us about Taoist Master Zhao's miracle last night." Mu Chufan's wife had been impatient for a long time. Now that she finally heard Taoist Master Zhao's words, she immediately pounced on the tattered praying mat and kowtowed. After kowtowing 9 times, she hurriedly pulled her hands, and the 2 children who were at a loss were also pulled over. She pressed their small heads to the ground and cried, "Children, quickly thank Taoist Master Xiao. If it wasn't for his grace, Mother would have left you last night." The 2 children were a little confused at first. However, when they heard that their mother would have left them if not for the tattered clay statue in front of them, they immediately stopped pressing their mother's hands and kowtowed to the ground while crying, "Thank you, Taoist Master Xiao. Thank you, Taoist Master Xiao." The children's crying immediately infected the villagers of General Ridge. Everyone wiped their tears along with them. "Everyone, my fellow villagers." Mu Chufan stood behind his wife and children and unconsciously shed tears. At this moment, he wiped his tears with his sleeves and said, "Everyone knows about my family situation. Ever since my wife married into the Mu family, she never enjoyed a day of happiness. Every day, she would be at home weaving, washing, and working hard. Later, after she had 2 children, her body became worse and worse. I felt pain in my heart when I saw it. However, I couldn't do anything at all. All the doctors in the village and town had seen her. She was slowly losing weight and had no strength. In the end, she couldn't even pick up a needle. Every doctor couldn't find the reason. They were really at their wits' end. To my family, my wife is the sky of our family. Without her, I don't know what this family would be like. Just last night, I sold the last bit of land in the family and took my wife and child to the town's most famous Jiang Rentang. However, when the doctor of Jiang Rentang saw my wife's condition, he didn't even accept the money. He only told me to bring my wife back. I'm afraid we won't be able to survive the night. For the sake of my wife's illness, I've already sold everything in my family. Even though I'm a dying child, I still eat very little. To be honest, my family isn't much different from that of an ordinary child beggar. But even so, I'm willing to pay any price to keep my wife by my side." Looking at his child and his wife's tattered clothes, Mu Chufan couldn't help but cry again. Last night, this lowly one carried my wife and took the child through the Jiangchao Ridge. This lowly one's heart tightened painfully. When I saw the Jiangchao Temple, I really couldn't bear it anymore. Previously, this lowly one had also been to the Shao Jin Temple, but I had never thought about this Jiangchao Temple. Since there was no hope for any other place, this lowly one really didn't want to give up the last hope. I thought of coming to the Jiangchao Temple to kowtow a few times to Taoist Xiao and see if Taoist Xiao would pity this lowly one. Who knew Taoist Xiao really showed his spirit? Speaking of the key point, Mu Chufan was exultant. After this lowly one kowtowed and prayed, Taoist Xiao really bestowed me with the elixir. After this lowly one consumed the elixir, my wife had a stomachache for the entire night, which scared this lowly one. But today, she's completely recovered. Although she still looks weak, this lowly one knows that my wife's complexion is completely different from yesterday. Everyone, look, after a day of recuperation, my wife can actually come to the Jiangchao Temple from the General Ridge by herself. If this isn't a miracle, then what is it? If other people were to preach like this, the people in the General Ridge might not believe it. However, everyone knew the condition of Mu Chufan's family and his wife's illness clearly. Today, Mu Chufan's wife had completely recovered. This was simply unbelievable to everyone. Since everyone could come here, they had already believed it. When this was preached in the Jiangchao Temple, waves of emotions were released. Boundless holy man. Seeing this, Taoist Xiao seized the opportunity and said in a deep voice, "Good Lord Mu, do you have a copper coin?" "Yes, I do." Mu Chufan was slightly stunned as he sighed. "Take it out," Taoist Xiao instructed in a profound manner. "Yes, Taoist Xiao." Mu Chufan took out a copper coin and placed it in the palm of his hand in front of Taoist Xiao's eyes. Taoist Xiao then turned his hand, and the silver coin that Mu Chufan gave him earlier immediately appeared. He placed it in Mu Chufan's palm solemnly, then took the copper coin and said emotionally, "Good Lord Mu, I know that the merit silver is your reward to Zhenren Xiao. It's your family's sincerity and piety. However, this is the only thing that the 4 members of your Mu family have. Without this silver, your family of 4 may have to eat the northwest wind tomorrow. Although I have accepted your silver coin and can help Taoist Xiao reconstruct his golden body tomorrow, do you think that Zhenren Xiao will like this merit silver?" At this point, Taoist Xiao purposely paused for a moment, then waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and said, "There's no need to say more." Zhenren Xiao definitely doesn't want to see the Mu family's predicament continue. Moreover, to Zhenren Xiao of my Jiangchao Temple, this kind of worldly thing is not something that he likes. What he wants is the gratitude and piety of us ordinary people. Therefore, this silver coin is no different from copper coin. This copper coin of yours is the piety of your Mu family of 4. You only need to give this copper coin and the piety of your Mu family to Zhenren Xiao, and you'll be repaying him for saving your Mu family. The silver coin is yours. Give the piety that Zhenren Xiao needs to Zhenren Xiao." As he spoke, Taoist Xiao respectfully placed the copper coin into the merit box on the offering table. Following the soft sound of the copper coin, Mu Chufan's tears instantly fell. The villagers of General Ridge were even more excited. Everyone knew the value of a silver coin and a copper coin. Other than Mu Chufan, no one would easily take out a silver coin. Now, seeing that Taoist Xiao did not want a silver coin and only wanted a copper coin, and that as long as there was sincerity, a copper coin was exactly the same as a silver coin, although the villagers of General Ridge were not rich, who did not have a copper coin. "Zhenren Xiao, you're really a god." At this moment, Mu Chufan bowed to his wife again. He choked with sobs. "From now on, I will only worship Zhenren Xiao. I will worship him for the rest of my life. Moreover, when my family situation has improved, I will definitely reconstruct your golden body for Zhenren Xiao." "Why do you need to wait for your family situation to improve?" A voice appeared out of nowhere. "Those of us who have no money will offer a copper coin. Those of us who have money will offer 5 or 10 copper coins. As long as you bring our piety, you will definitely be able to reconstruct your golden body for Zhenren Xiao in no time." Following this voice, another copper coin flew out from the crowd and landed on the offering table. "Amateus, thank you so much, kind lord." Taoist Xiao was overjoyed. He really wanted to thank this villager whose name he did not know. That's right, that's right. Instantly, everyone opened their pockets. There was no need to say anything else. The copper coins fell into the hall like rain. Everyone. Taoist Xiao was really elated. While avoiding the rain of coins, he said anxiously, "When I take out the merit book..." Unfortunately, the sound of the copper coins falling to the ground had already drowned out his voice. Muzi, an extremely surprised voice suddenly shouted, "Is this the panacea that you were talking about?" There really is one. Not to mention everyone hurriedly turning around. Even Taoist Zhao's eyes flashed with eagerness. The first copper coin was naturally thrown out by Xiaohua. At this moment, He hid behind the crowd and looked over. A man who was about the same age as Mu Chu Fan was holding a thumb-sized black object in his hand. He was extremely surprised as he shouted, This seems like it, but it seems like—" In the darkness of the night, the thumb-sized object could not be seen clearly. In fact, before Mu Chu Fan gave the ugly pill to his wife last night, he also did not believe it. He was just treating a dead horse as a living horse. On the tree, the eyes of the crowd were as sharp as snow. Immediately, some people raised their heads and looked at the only banyan tree in the Taoist temple. At the end of the branches, between the leaves, there was a thumb-sized banyan fruit. They could not help but shout excitedly. When Taoist Xiao saw this, he hurriedly shouted, Benevolent people, Taoist Zhao's gift is a miracle. It will not hinder anything. Although this banyan fruit is an ordinary item, if you are sincere, it will definitely have a miraculous effect. Of course, although Taoist Xiao is benevolent to the people, if your heart is not sincere and you are unable to worship him sincerely, even if you take the banyan fruit and eat it, it may not be effective. The crowd was already noisy. They only heard the first half of Taoist Zhao's sentence. Why would they care about the second half? When some people saw the banyan fruit on the banyan tree, some nimble villagers quickly climbed up the tree. Just as Taoist Xiao finished speaking, the banyan fruit on the banyan tree also fell with a walala sound. Snatch! Although no one shouted it out, everyone was shouting in their hearts. They swarmed towards the banyan fruit that fell to the ground. Those villagers who did not enter the Taoist temple also shouted and rushed in. More than 100 people crazily snatching the banyan fruit was very frightening. When Taoist Xiao saw this, he was afraid that something big would happen. He could only shout, If you are sincere, then it will happen. Don't take too much. If you take too much, Taoist Xiao will be angry. Taoist Zhao's words were somewhat effective. Fortunately, the banyan tree was not small, and there were many banyan fruits. In a short moment, the villagers who rushed into the Taoist temple all had one. Chapter 3168. Those who have received the grace, please leave. You can go home and see if you can receive Taoist Zhao's grace. Taoist Xiao saw that the temple was overcrowded, so he quickly shouted, Taoist Zhao's grace is everywhere. When you see the miracle tomorrow, you can come to Jiangqiao Temple to thank him. Go, we also want to pay our respects to Taoist Xiao. The villagers outside the temple were already impatient. They didn't believe it at first, but when they saw the banyan fruit, even if they didn't believe it, they couldn't help but come in and pick up too. Greed was in human nature, and no one could avoid it. For a moment, the small temple was even more chaotic. The villagers inside the temple did not want to go out and wanted to take more. The villagers outside the temple rushed in and wanted to snatch one. Not long after Xiao Daoist finished speaking, there was friction at the entrance of the Taoist temple. There were screams and cries that tore people's hearts and lungs apart. Oh no! How could Taoist Xiao not know what happened? The expression on his face changed drastically, and the sweat on his forehead began to flow down. This happiness had come too quickly, and it had left even faster. If there were any casualties tonight, not only would the villagers not come, even the government wouldn't let him go, right? While thinking, Taoist Zhao's eyes turned quickly. He brushed his sleeves on the table and prepared to take out a few copper coins to ask Yuanya to come and save him. Ignorant, unruly people. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in the main hall of the Taoist temple, extinguishing 3 candles in an instant, leaving only one flickering in the wind. A cold voice came from the worn-out statue. How could this Taoist master's gift fall on your heads so easily? Just looking at your selfishness and disregard for others, this Tao master is bitterly disappointed. Taoist Xiao was stunned. He turned around in disbelief and looked at the statue in front of him, which he had never worshipped before, and was stunned. Get out of my sight, all of you. When I see your sincerity, it won't be too late to come and ask for my grace. The clay statue coldly spoke again. Along with this voice, the ground of the Taoist temple began to tremble. The entire banyan tree was shaking. The villagers who were climbing on the banyan tree could no longer stay any longer. Plop, plop, they all fell down. Daoist Xiao, please calm down, please calm down. Daoist Xiao didn't dare to delay any longer. He quickly knelt in front of the statue and kowtowed. The villagers are ignorant, and it's all my fault. If there is any blame, please put it on I. I am willing to take the blame for these villagers. Daoist Xiao, please forgive me. As the ground shook, everyone panicked. Not only did everyone in the temple kneel on the ground, but even those outside of the temple couldn't stand still. Some rolled down the mountain path, and some knelt down. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, the Jiangchao temple was completely silent. Only the sound of the wind could be heard. Poof, with a soft sound, the candles on the candles exploded. Xiao Daoist raised his head and looked at the broken statue. He bit his lips and kowtowed. He slowly stood up and turned around. He flung the horsetail whisk in his hand and sighed. Boundless holy man, benevolent masters, please rise. Daoist Xiao is already angry. We should listen to Daoist Xiao's orders and leave the temple first. I won't sleep tonight, and I will repent in front of Daoist Xiao. Those who haven't received Daoist Xiao's blessings, please come back tomorrow. Daoist Xiao said sympathetically, it's a pity for Daoist Xiao's blessings. If Daoist Xiao wasn't angry, it's all my fault, please forgive me. Immediately, everyone kowtowed again. Even though they were sober, they were still ashamed of their impulsiveness. Yuanya Xiaohua. Daoist Xiao ordered again, send the villagers down the mountain. I want to pray for the villagers in front of Daoist Xiao. Daoist Xiao sat down on the futon and didn't say anything else. Dear villagers, Daoist Xiao is angry. I'm afraid all the blessings have passed away. After Daoist Xiao prays for you. Please come back tomorrow. Xiao Huan knew that Yuanya's words were clumsy, so he hurried out of the crowd and walked to the door of the Daoist temple. He shouted at the villagers outside the temple. If we still gather here, Daoist Xiao won't have to pray for blessings, and Daoist Xiao's anger will descend. The villagers outside the Daoist temple were both regretful and afraid. However, when they heard Xiao Hua say that all the blessings had turned into nothing, their hearts calmed down. They all kowtowed outside the temple and went down Jiangshao Ridge with complicated feelings. As for the people inside the Daoist temple, besides being afraid like the villagers outside, they were also a bit angry. Who would be happy to see the spirit pills in their hands turn into banyan fruits in front of Daoist Xiao's anger? However, when they saw the villagers outside the Daoist temple slowly leave, they didn't dare to stay inside the temple and left one by one. On the other hand, Mu Chufan's face was filled with ecstasy. He walked up to the praying mat and kowtowed a few more times. He said sincerely, Spiritual Master Xiao, this humble one hears your voice again. This humble one thanks Spiritual Master once again. I believe that you have already seen this humble one's wish. This humble one will definitely reconstruct your golden body. After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Daoist Xiao to say anything. He took his wife and 2 children and followed the crowd down the mountain. Phew! Once everyone in the Daoist temple left, Daoist Xiao let out a long breath. He looked at the dim hall and quickly got up to light the 3 candles that were extinguished by the wind. Then, he knelt down on the futon again. He didn't dare to look at the statue that he had never carefully looked at before. He only looked at the ground, and his heart was filled with excitement. Yes, even when Mu Chufan said that it obtained a spirit pill from the hall to cure his wife, Daoist Xiao didn't believe him. After all, Daoist Xiao had been facing this statue for a long time. In the past few years, it had never given him any surprises. How could something strange have happened last night? However, the tremors on the ground and the wind clearly told Daoist Xiao that the statue really did have a spirit, or rather, someone really did something to it. Daoist Xiao lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then he slightly tilted his head and looked at the entrance of the Daoist temple in the dark night. His eyes were filled with doubt. It was obvious that Daoist Xiao didn't need to use his brain to think. He could think of the strangeness of this matter. This strangeness must have something to do with Xiao Hua, who had just appeared at noon yesterday. If it wasn't for the hundreds of villagers fighting over the banyan fruit, Daoist Xiao might have thought that Mu Chufan had obtained a spirit pill from the Jiangshao temple because of Mu Chufan's wishful thinking. Or maybe it was a coincidence. Even if he suspected Xiao Hua, he wouldn't be too sure. After all, in his eyes, Xiao Hua was a guy whose meridians were naturally blocked. Although the way he appeared was shocking. So what? Daoist Xiao's knowledge was not as ignorant as it seemed. Chapter 3169. Even fellow Daoist Kuang, who had the highest cultivation among the four, was no match for Qiu Feng's black iron needle, let alone the other three. When the black iron needle flew back to Qiu Feng, the other three red lights had already floated in front of Qiu Feng. Seeing the last black iron needle fly back, Qiu Feng waved his hand and picked up all four black iron needles. He put them in front of his nose and smelled them. A gratified smile appeared on his face. He looked in another direction and saw Zhang Xiaohua, who was clumsily using the flying technique to escape. His lips curled into a sinister smile. Just as he was about to raise his hand to point at the magic treasure, he retracted his hand. He waved his hand, and the black iron needles returned to the magic treasure. With a flash of sword light under his feet, he slowly chased after Zhang Xiaohua. Poor Zhang Xiaohua saw Qiu Feng appear in front of her. She cupped her hands and asked. Seeing that Qiu Feng didn't answer, and seeing that Qiu Feng was using his magical power to deal with Gan Qinggu and the other three, she immediately said, "Senior, don't worry. I have something urgent to do. I'll leave first." After saying that, she didn't know which direction to go and actually fled in the direction of the demon-resisting valley. After fleeing like a stray dog for a while, she didn't see any red lights attacking her, nor did Qiu Feng catch up with her. Zhang Xiaohua was slightly stunned. She slowed down and turned her head to look. She didn't see Qiu Feng's shadow. She muttered to herself, "Could it be that I have wronged him?" After looking for a while, just as Zhang Xiaohua was feeling guilty, a voice came from above her head. "Little guy, are you looking for I?" Zhang Xiaohua turned pale with fright. She looked up. Sure enough, Qiu Feng was standing on a sword light and silently appearing above her head. Zhang Xiaohua's heart suddenly shrank. She stopped and cupped her hands. "Haha, no, I'm trying to find the direction. I don't know, where am I going?" "Oh, right, where are you going?" Qiu Feng looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said with a fake smile, "I'm going to the demon-resisting valley, of course." "Oh, is this the way to the Imperial Demon Valley?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled very helplessly and said, "Then, Junior went to the wrong place. Junior wants to go to Jingbo City. Senior, please go first. This Junior will turn around right away." Little guy, your flying technique isn't bad. You can actually fly so fast without a flying shuttle. It seems that Lord Alliance Master has trained you well. I wouldn't dare. It's all the hard work of the elders in the sect. This Junior doesn't dare to claim the credit. There's a flying shuttle in your storage ring. Don't you usually use it? Qiu Feng smiled like a cat watching a mouse. "Oh, there's no need. This Junior likes to stroll around and admire the flowers and the moon. If Senior likes it, you can take it." "Oh, and my sect has many storage rings. Since Senior saved this Junior's life, the storage ring and the things inside can be considered as a token of my gratitude to Senior. Please accept it." Zhang Xiaohua's heart thumped when he heard this, and he quickly pushed the storage ring away. "But why is there a token from the Immortal Ascension sect in your storage ring?" Qiu Feng was still smiling. "This." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and said, "Senior Feng doesn't have time now. He asked me to go to the Immortal Ascension sect. I have something to tell his disciple." Why didn't he use the message talisman, or the disciple of the Immortal Ascension sect? Qiu Feng asked curiously. Why did he ask you to go so far? Zhang Xiaohua didn't know what a message talisman was. She could only bite the bullet and say, "This matter is very important and urgent. Senior, please forgive me and let me leave early." If I delay, Senior Feng will be in trouble. Ha ha ha. Xiao Feng looked up and laughed. He looked at the sky and said, "Forget it. It's getting late. I don't want to play with you anymore." As he spoke, he pointed his hand, and a red light appeared from the magic treasure in front of him. What are you doing?" Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be angry and said, "Aren't you afraid of my alliance master?" What else can I do? Of course, I'm going to kill you. Just like those 4 Foundation establishment cultivators. Xiao Feng sneered and said, "Alliance Master? Do you really think that you are a blood relative of the Alliance Master? Am I not? That's what Senior Feng from the Immortal Ascension sect told me." Zhang Xiaohua put on an act. "How can it be possible that the Alliance Master brought you into the demon-resisting valley?" Xiao Feng snorted and said, "Feng Shu used the soul-searching technique on you and accidentally erased your memory. He was afraid that this matter would cause trouble in the demon-resisting valley, so he made it up at the last minute." Soul-searching technique? How? How is that possible? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. If I were to tell this to others, perhaps they would really believe me. It's a pity. Feng Shu thought that I was a golden core cultivator who came in from outside after the demon gate was closed, so he made up such a lie. But no matter how much he thought about it, he didn't know that I had already entered the Demon Imperial Valley before the demon gate was opened. On the way to the Demon Imperial Valley, I even met the Alliance Master and the others and followed them into the Demon Imperial Valley. But at that time, there was no one like you beside the Alliance Master. Of course, I'm just a golden core cultivator. How could Feng Shu care about me? Since you already knew, why didn't you expose me in the demon-resisting valley? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. If I expose you in front of you, wouldn't I be courting death? A spirit-severing stage cultivator could kill me with just one finger. How would I dare to do that? Xiao Feng said self-mockingly. I was thinking of exposing you when I brought you out. However, when I saw that Feng Shu gave you the storage ring and wanted to use it to cover your mouth, I changed my plan. He wanted me to cover up his mistake with just a promise of a few pointers. He would rather give the storage ring to an ant like you than give it to me. Tell me, would I agree? Are you going to take me back to the Imperial Demon Valley? Zhang Xiaohua sighed. His eyes turned rapidly and his mind raced. He wanted to escape. How is that possible? Why would I take you back to the demon-resisting valley? Wouldn't it be better to get rid of you and get the storage ring? Xiao Feng sneered and showed his ugly face. As he spoke, he pointed the red black iron needle. The black iron needle turned into a red light and stabbed toward Zhang Xiaohua's chest. Before the red light arrived, a restrictive force surrounded Zhang Xiaohua. It was as if there was a big hand holding her. Xiao Feng used the magic treasure black iron needle to assassinate Zhang Xiaohua. He didn't take Zhang Xiaohua seriously at all. He threw the magic treasure in the air in front of Zhang Xiaohua and pointed his finger at the magic treasure slowly. It was as if he knew that Zhang Xiaohua was a dead person. It was just as Xiao Feng thought. When Zhang Xiaohua saw Xiao Feng take out the magic treasure and felt the restrictive force around her, she made a prompt decision. She didn't care about the consumption of true qi in her meridians. She made a hand seal and ran away before the restrictive force was complete. She had used up a lot of true qi in her meridians when she used the flying technique just now. She didn't have enough true qi in her meridians. Only God knew how much she could escape. Alas, maybe only when she became a ghost would she know. This was because before he could escape 30 meters away, the crimson profound iron needle had already reached his back by about half a foot. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had been released the whole time. When she saw how powerful the black iron needle was, her heart was already dead. She sighed in her heart. Alas, I haven't even seen what this place looks like. I don't even know where I came from, and I'm already a lonely ghost here at this critical moment. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt her vision blur. She felt as though she had fallen into a huge quagmire. The restrictive force was 100 times stronger than Xiao Feng's. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't move her limbs at all. She couldn't fly at all with the flying technique, and her body was floating quietly in the air. She didn't fall down. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She looked around. The stars in the sky were still there, and she could see the clouds clearly under the moonlight. However, the clouds seemed to have frozen and didn't move at all. Then, Zhang Xiaohua thought of the black iron needle on her back. She released her divine sense, but it was as though she had fallen into a quagmire. It took a lot of effort to scan. When she saw the black iron needle on her back, it had already pierced her back. However, it had stopped and couldn't pierce any further. Zhang Xiaohua's heart jumped. Could it be? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled, she heard Qiu Feng exclaim, "Who is it? Which spirit-severing stage, senior, is it? A spirit-severing stage cultivator?" Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Hee, Qiu Feng. Who else could it be? A voice that Zhang Xiaohua was familiar with rang out. The voice was ethereal and seemed to fill the entire world. "Senior Feng?" Qiu Feng's voice was filled with shock and despair. "Didn't you go to report the situation to the Alliance Master?" Feng Shu chuckled. "How can you believe such a reason? Moreover, do I need a whole night to report the situation to the Alliance Master? If I wasn't held up by some matters, I wouldn't have seen your evil side. Qiu Feng, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. I never thought that a mere golden core cultivator like you would dare to target me." Zhang Xiaohua had just recovered from the joy of not being killed by the black iron needle when she heard Feng Shu's voice. Her heart was even colder than when she saw Qiu Feng. Just like how he didn't think that Qiu Feng would save him for no reason, Zhang Xiaohua was even more naive to think that Feng Shu, a spirit-severing stage cultivator, would abandon the demon-resisting Valley's matters and come to the wilderness just to save him. Zhang Xiaohua already had no power to fight back against a golden core cultivator. Now that he met a spirit-severing stage cultivator, how could Zhang Xiaohua have any hope? In the eyes of a spirit-severing stage cultivator, he was even less than an ant. As expected, the two of them didn't care about him at all. A slightly illusory figure gradually appeared beside Zhang Xiaohua. It was Feng Shu from the Immortal Ascension sect. Chapter 3170. However, when hundreds of villagers were about to die, this so-called Taoist Master Xiao appeared at the right time, although his voice was not familiar to Taoist Master Xiao. But don't forget, the voice of the first copper coin throne and was also unknown to Taoist Master Xiao. Taoist Master Xiao was not stupid enough to think that a villager from General Ridge could read his mind and knew what he was thinking. He was anxious about the situation at Jiangchao Temple and gave him the copper coins at the critical moment. In this Jiangchao Temple, in this longevity town, who else could cooperate with him like this other than Yuanya and Xiaohua? As for Yuanya, would he still have a copper coin on him? It was more like he threw a meat bun. This Xiaohua, could it be, is he really a Taoist master? Taoist Master Xiao looked at the night sky absent-mindedly. His mind was in a mess. If that's really the case, I today and yesterday, aren't I too disrespectful? All right, didn't he call himself a Taoist master? Yes, I'm afraid that's really the case. He wasn't sent by that bitch. But if he's really a Taoist master, why is he so respectful to me? Taoist Master Xiao was puzzled again. Speaking of yesterday, thinking of this, Taoist Master Xiao's face changed greatly, almost jumping up. Yes, yesterday he couldn't even walk properly. Today he doesn't seem to be any different. Then he fell into the origin stone. Must be someone else's doing. Now that he's in this Jiangchao temple, won't he attract an even more powerful master? As to what should I do? But he has such cultivation. If he can help me. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Master Xiao hesitated again. Just as Taoist Xiao was hesitating, the sound of footsteps came from outside the temple. Listening to Xiao Hua's heavy footsteps, which were much clearer than Yuan Ye's, Taoist Xiao could only bitterly smile. Seeing Xiao Hua enter the temple first, Yuanya was a little excited and followed behind Xiao Hua cautiously. Taoist Master Zhao's heart trembled. Yes, even Yuanya can see that something is wrong. Why am I still hesitating? Thinking of this, Taoist Master Xiao smiled and said, Taoist Master Xiao, you've been busy the whole night. Are you tired? Oh, I am indeed a little tired. Xiao Huan knew that today's matter had already exposed him. He originally wanted to explain it to Taoist Xiao, but he didn't expect Taoist Xiao to greet him in such a manner. He hesitated for a moment before replying with a smile. Since you're tired, why don't you take a rest first? Taoist Xiao smiled and said to Yuanya, Yuanya, come over here and help your master clean up these copper coins. Yes, master. Yuanya answered as usual. He secretly glanced at Xiao Hua, then quickly ran to the main hall and helped Taoist Xiao pick up the copper coins one by one. Xiao Hua saw that it had nothing to do with him, so the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. He ignored Taoist Xiao and went to the west wing. At this moment, there was not a single trace of the spirit stone in the west wing. It must have been put away by Taoist Xiao. Xiao Hua only casually glanced around before taking out a praying mat and throwing it on the ground. He then sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to meditate. There were indeed a lot of copper coins in the main hall. Although there weren't 100 people in the Taoist temple at the time, each person had 1 or 2 coins. There were even people who gave away a whole bunch of copper coins. When you put all the copper coins into the merit box. The box was unusually heavy. Master, you casually handed the merit box to Taoist Xiao and asked, keep it well. Send this thing to your master's room. Taoist Xiao was very kind, and it was rare for him to be so kind. Then come to the main hall. Your master has something to say to you. Yes, master. Yuanya answered and left with the merit box. After a moment, he came back and said in a low voice, Master, if you have anything to say, please tell me. Sit down. Taoist Xiao sat on a praying mat and pointed at another praying mat. Yes, master. Yuanya answered and sat down. His eyes were extremely bright under the candlelight. He looked at Taoist Xiao, not knowing what he wanted to say. Yeah, do you still remember the story of the king that your master told you? Taoist Xiao thought for a moment and said, Of course I do. Yuanya asked, puzzled. Master would tell me this story every time he was drunk. Of course I remember it clearly. Tell me about it. Taoist Xiao said, very pleased. Once upon a time, in a place in the hidden immortal continent, there was a small country called Danliang. Yuanya said without hesitation. Although the country was very small, the climate was very good and the products were abundant. In addition, the king was wise, and he governed the country well. The entire country was extremely prosperous. The citizens of the country were even more prosperous. Every time the king was mentioned, they would love and worship him. Every time the king came out to inspect the country, he would be warmly welcomed by the citizens. Moreover, although the country was powerful, the king was very peace-loving. He never sent out troops to harass the surrounding countries. The kings of other countries were also proud to be allies with this king. It could be said that such a benevolent king was very rare in the entire hidden immortal continent. But such a kind-hearted king, a king who cared about his people, married such a sinister queen. Since the day the queen married into the palace, she had been thinking about how to overthrow the king's throne. Very quickly, more than 10 years passed. When the queen saw that the king was so loved by the citizens, she knew that she could not shake the king's throne with her own strength. So she colluded with the king's brother and then borrowed the power of the neighboring country's Buddhist sect to destroy the king's cultivation. Although the king's cultivation was destroyed, he had been running the palace for dozens of years. With his arrangements in the palace, he could have died together with his brother and the queen. However, looking at his brother and wife, he could not bear to do it. So, under the protection of a group of loyal guards, he escaped from the Danliang kingdom. As for those loyal guards, they were all killed by the guards sent by my brother and the queen. Yuanya said very fluently. When the king and the queen saw that the king had escaped, they were afraid that the people who loved the king would find the king. So they made up a story of the king's cultivation going berserk and pushed many evil deeds onto the king. When Yuanya said this, Taoist Xiao smiled and looked at the west room. He said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, since you want to listen, why don't you come out? This old man's story. There are many more. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua, who was hiding in the west wing, didn't reply even after Daoist Xiao had spoken for a long time. This, Daoist Xiao clenched his teeth. His face was very awkward. He thought that Xiao Hua would be curious and listen to him. Who knew that Xiao Hua was not interested in this matter at all? Master, seeing Daoist Xiao interrupt him, Yuanya said curiously, "Isn't Xiao Hua tired?" None of your business. Daoist Xiao waved his sleeve coldly. "Yes, master." Yuanya nodded and said, "Although the king escaped, what are you talking about? What is there to talk about?" "This is what this old man told you," Daoist Xiao said angrily. "You have been following this old man for many years. Why haven't you made any progress?" "Master," Yuanya felt that Daoist Xiao was a bit strange. However, he was used to Daoist Xiao's anger. He stood up and was about to leave. "When did this old man tell you to leave?" Daoist Xiao snorted again. "Yes, master." Yuanya stopped and sat down again. "This old man wants to ask you, how confident are you in the challenge in 10 days? Daoist Xiao looked at Yuanya in disappointment, then glanced at the west wing and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" Yuanya thought for a moment and said, "If it is the bald donkeys from Shao Jin Temple, disciple still has confidence in fighting 1 against 4. But if there is the scholar from Changsheng Academy, disciple doesn't have any confidence. Then are we waiting to be kicked out of Changsheng town?" Daoist Xiao said angrily. "Master, isn't there still Xiao Hua?" Yuanya hurriedly said, "Disciple thinks that he is much stronger than disciple. If he can fight, he can definitely defeat the scholar from Changsheng Academy." Yuanya said regretfully, "Unfortunately, disciple wants to become his disciple this afternoon and learn some techniques. What did he say?" Daoist Zhao's eyes lit up as he hurriedly asked. "Xiao Hua said that disciple doesn't deserve to be his disciple." Yuanya said shamefully, "And he said that disciple is master's disciple. If you don't ask, he won't teach disciple." Go. Daoist Xiao hurriedly said. "Since when was this old man your master? I have never taught you any Daoist techniques, so I can't be considered your master. If you are willing, you can become his disciple." "Master, you really agreed?" Yuanya was overjoyed. This, Daoist Xiao was slightly stunned when he heard Yuanya's question. Just now, he was hot-headed and immediately agreed, but he regretted it as soon as he said it. Now that Yuanya's words gave him some leeway, he didn't know how to answer. However, Daoist Xiao glanced at the darkness in the west room, gritted his teeth, and said with a smile, "Of course, this old man agrees. I brought you out to find a way out for you. Unfortunately, this old man is useless and can't teach you. This fellow Daoist Xiao is also your fate. If he can teach you, you will definitely be able to escape death." "What death?" Yuanya was puzzled. "You should quickly go and become Daoist Zhao's disciple." Daoist Zhao's expression was somewhat stagnant, and he was also somewhat nervous. He urged, "After you become his disciple, this old man will naturally tell you." "Yes, master." Yuanya stood up, but at this moment, Xiao Hua's indifferent voice sounded. "When did I agree to accept him as my disciple?" Fellow Daoist Xiao, this old man really thought that you didn't listen." Daoist Zhao's heart suddenly relaxed. He hurriedly stood up and looked towards the west room. There, Xiao Hua's thin figure slowly walked out of the shadows. Chapter 3171. Seeing Feng Shu appear, Qiu Feng became even more nervous. His body trembled slightly as he stammered, I know my mistake. I beg for your mercy." Unfortunately, Feng Shu didn't even look at him. He turned his head and swept his gaze over Zhang Xiaohua. He nodded slightly. "And so you left a mark on this little guy's body. That's why you chased after him. It seems like you already had a plan when you sent him out." Ha ha! Seeing that Feng Shu ignored him, Qiu Feng knew that it was useless to continue begging. He straightened up and laughed wildly. "I thought you were afraid of blowing up Zhang Xiaohua's matter. So you compensated him with a storage ring and asked me to secretly send him out of the demon-resisting valley under the banner of the Alliance Master. That's why I coveted him. Now that your spiritual sense has come in person, it seems things aren't as simple as I thought. Since you have such thoughts about this little guy, then this little plan of mine is nothing. Under normal circumstances, even if you killed a dozen chi refining stage cultivators, this old man wouldn't care. But you wanted to ruin this old man's plan. How can this old man let you go? Feng Shu said with a smile. This old man worked so hard to hide it from Chan Si Miao. I pretended to be panicked and even compensated with a storage ring. Wasn't it because I didn't want to attract your attention? I didn't think that I would succeed in drawing out your greed. Sigh. This little one was blinded by greed. Why didn't I think of that? The spiritual sense of a spirit-severing stage cultivator isn't something that ordinary things can withstand. If it weren't for this storage ring, this little guy wouldn't be able to find a place to mark his spiritual sense. Qiu Feng sighed and looked around in self-pity. What's the use of knowing it now? Feng Shu said with a smile. Your fate was already sealed when you placed the spiritual sense mark on this little guy. Birds die for food, and men die for wealth. This is the truth. Then, Senior Feng, this humble one has no intention of begging for mercy. It's just that, before this humble one dies, could you tell this humble one that this little fellow is nothing more than an aura refining cultivator? What does he have that's worth Senior taking such a risk and making so many plans for? Qiu Feng no longer had any hope of surviving. However, he was extremely puzzled. Zhang Xiaohua was a young man whom he had discovered with his own eyes and had personally used his detection technique to check her cultivation. How could she be worthy of Feng Shu, a deity transformation cultivator, taking action? Not only did he ask him to send him out of the Imperial Demon Valley, but he also used a storage ring, which was rarely seen in the cultivation world, as a telepathic thought mark. Now, he even used his avatar to come here. This was extremely abnormal. What else could it be? His bone structure is amazingly good, and his aptitude is excellent. I just want to cherish what I have and take him as my last disciple. Glancing at Zhang Xiaohua, Feng Shu smiled kindly. This smile caused Zhang Xiaohua's hair to stand on end. A person who she had only met once and didn't even know her name actually cherished her aptitude and wanted to take her in? This was something that Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't believe even if she was beaten to death. As expected, Qiu Feng didn't believe it either. He shook his head slightly and said, Senior Feng, don't lie to me. Even if he has heaven-defying aptitude, how can he enter the eyes of a deity transformation cultivator? You'll be able to pass the minor heavenly tribulation after cultivating for another 1,000 years. After passing the minor heavenly tribulation, you'll be like an immortal. Why would you care about the inheritance of the mortal world? It's up to you to believe it or not. In any case, I believe it. Feng Shu didn't seem to intend to explain it all. He looked up at the sky and smiled. Qiu Feng, since you've done many things for me, I'll allow you to die. I won't disturb your soul. You can go now. Sigh, thank you, Senior. It's only now that I have some realization. Those who kill will be killed. As he spoke, Qiu Feng patted his waist as if he wanted to take out a weapon from his storage bag. However, just as he patted his waist, a pitch-black Dharma artifact that was shining with a black light appeared. Feng Shu sneered and said, Qiu Feng, do you think you can escape just because I've sent a clone here? With a loud bang, the magic weapon immediately exploded. Then, Zhang Xiaohua felt the solidified space around her move slightly. Then, Qiu Feng's body strangely dispersed. His flesh and blood instantly turned into a fluffy blood mist. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua felt that she could move her body again. The blood mist in the distance was blown away by the night wind. Other than the smell of blood, there was no trace of it left. What kind of technique is this? Zhang Xiaohua felt her hair stand on end. Feng Shu seemed to be not far from her. He didn't even move his hand. Not only did he destroy the magic weapon that Qiu Feng was preparing to resist, he also killed Qiu Feng until there was nothing left of him. All right, little guy, it's over. This is your storage ring. As Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, Feng Shu turned around and waved his hand. The storage ring with 6 lives including 1 golden core cultivator and 5 foundation establishment cultivators, slowly flew to Zhang Xiaohua. Feng Shu said, "I was too careless. Although I don't care about this storage ring, it's rare in the cultivation world, especially for low-level cultivators like Qiufeng. Give it to me first. I'll teach you the concealment technique so that others can't see it." Looking at the storage ring that flew to her and stopped in front of her, causing countless low-level cultivators to bow down to it, Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought. She didn't rush to take it. "Why don't you put away?" Feng Shu's voice was filled with kindness. He asked softly, "Are you confused by Qiufeng's words?" Zhang Xiaohua didn't answer. She just stared at the storage ring. Feng Shu didn't rush her. He just stood in the air and watched quietly with a smile on his face. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and bowed. "Senior Feng, I don't know if what Qiufeng said is true, but I really can't remember anything. Yes, Qiufeng is right. You suddenly appeared in the demon-resisting valley." This old man was eager to take credit, so I used a soul-searching technique to check your brain. In the end, I accidentally destroyed your memories. This old man didn't say anything before because when I checked your cultivation, I found that you're very suitable to cultivate my celestial ascending sex martial arts. Under my guidance, you'll definitely become the most dazzling cultivator in the celestial ascending sect. So, in order to not cause any misunderstandings, I hid this matter. Of course, if I can train you to become a soul formation cultivator, won't I be able to explain it to you? Feng Shu's tone was slightly cold. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't stupid. She fell for Fairy Fei Ying's trap so easily because she didn't understand the life and death situation in the cultivation world. Ever since she saw Golden Core Stage and Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators die so easily in front of her, she was already on her guard. Now that she heard Feng Shu's words, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. She cupped her hands and said, "Thank you, Senior Feng, for thinking highly of me. But, as I said before, I still need to report this matter to my sect master. Senior, please put this storage ring away first." Feng Shu frowned when he heard that. Instantly, Zhang Xiaohua felt the temperature around him drop, and there was a real chill in the air. But then, this uncomfortable feeling disappeared. Feng Shu asked kindly, "If that's the case, then you must have thought of which sect you belong to." This. Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss for words. She could talk nonsense to Fairy Fei Ying, but Feng Shu was a soul formation cultivator who had lived for thousands of years. How could there be a sect in the cultivation world that he didn't know? Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to lie. She answered honestly, "Senior, please no. I still don't know which sect I belong to." Amen. This is also what this old man is worried about. Because of this old man, I will erase your memories. Even if you don't want to become my disciple, this old man can allow you to walk around the Dawn Rain continent as you wish. You've seen it too. Golden Core Stage and Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators can be killed by others at any time, let alone a Chi Refinement Stage cultivator like you. If anything happens to you, won't I be responsible for it too? Not to mention this old man's uneasiness. Even this old man's cultivation progress will be greatly hindered. Feng Shu said sincerely, "If it's possible, you should go to my Immortal Ascension sect first. No matter if you become my disciple or not, you can rest there. Once I'm done with the demon-resisting valley, I'll rush back to the Immortal Ascension sect and do my best to help you recover your memory. Wait until you recover your memory, then we can make plans. What do you think?" This. Zhang Xiaohua was a little moved. Feng Shu was telling the truth. She had only been awake for half a day and had already encountered so many things. Experts died one after another in front of her. Moreover, none of these experts could kill her easily. In this unfamiliar environment, in this ferocious place, in this cruel battle, if he were to make even the slightest mistake, he would end up dead in the underworld. Finding a thick thigh to cling to was also a brilliant idea, but was she really a cultivation genius? Zhang Xiaohua thought about Feng Shu's method of killing people without making a move. Then, She thought about her own aptitude and the precious storage ring that Feng Shu had given her. Suddenly, she had an idea. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Alas, Feng Shu, you old man, don't deceive this junior. This junior is only a chi refining junior. If you have any thoughts about this junior, you can tell me. If it's possible, this junior won't refuse. Even if it's extremely difficult, this junior will consider it, carefully considering that senior sent this junior out of the Imperial Demon Valley. Haha, you little brat, you think too much. How can it be so complicated? Feng Shu still couldn't change the way he addressed her. He still called her little brat. He was still trying to persuade her. Hey, since it's like this, I don't want to go to the Immortal Ascending Sect for no reason. I also want to repay you for your kindness. Then, I don't even have half a copper coin on me. I can only use my life to repay you. Zhang Xiaohua said. She waved her hand and was about to slap her forehead. Zhang Xiaohua used all her strength, and her hand was extremely fast. However, she was praying in her heart, Feng Shu, hurry up, hurry up. Zhang Xiaohua was gambling. Indeed, he did not know what Feng Shu saw in him, but other than his life, he had nothing else. If Feng Shu really cared, there was no reason for him not to make a move. Maybe Zhang Xiaohua was right. Or maybe Feng Shu saw through Zhang Xiaohua's thoughts. However, he couldn't let Zhang Xiaohua die. He had to make a move. The moment Zhang Xiaohua's hand touched her forehead, at that moment, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't move her body. When her hand touched her forehead, the heaven and earth essence chi around Zhang Xiaohua froze. Even the space seemed to be frozen. Just when Zhang Xiaohua was secretly proud of herself, she heard Feng Shu's cold voice. Since you don't want to accept my toast, I can only make you drink a forfeit. Then, Zhang Xiaohua felt the air around her tighten. It was as if she was being held tightly by something. A force appeared on her body and pulled her towards Feng Shu. Hey, I screwed up again. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua knew that she had made a fool of herself again. She had successfully provoked the anger of Soul Formation Cultivator. Who? At this moment, she suddenly heard Feng Shu's angry roar. Then, a pale yellow light flashed. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt her body become light. Her body floated up. She was in a hurry. A very strange force attacked her and hit her body. An unparalleled force instantly circulated in her meridians and quickly withdrew. Ha ha, Feng Shu. I was wondering why you were so free. Instead of guarding the demon-resisting valley, you sent a clone here. So, you found such a treasure. Chan Simiao's voice seemed to be dancing in the air. Chapter 3172. If I can listen, I will listen. If I can't, I won't listen. Xiao Hua slowly walked over. His tone was still indifferent. Xiao Daoist was a bit embarrassed, as if his plan was seen through. However, he immediately regained his calmness and said with a smile, Fellow Daoist Xiao, yesterday and today, I was a bit rude. Please forgive me. It's okay. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, You guys dubbed me out from the Spirit Stone. It can be considered fate. I owe you guys a favor. You don't have to worry about the Immortal Buddha Ceremony Challenge. Since the rules are set by the Temple of Tides, I only need to show up and expel the Buddhist sect from the town of immortals. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao. Xiao Daoist was really happy and bowed to thank him. However, Xiao Daoist couldn't help but ask, Fellow Daoist Xiao, it's not that I don't believe you, but fellow Daoist doesn't seem to have my Daoist magic power. I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with those bald donkeys of the small gold temple. Of course, I don't have confidence in 3 days, Xiao Hua said with a smile. If it's 10 days later, I have 70% confidence. Oh, I see. Xiao Daoist naturally understood that Xiao Hua should be injured right now. 3 days later, he might not be able to recover, but 10 days later, he should be able to see results. Then I'll have to trouble fellow Daoist Xiao. Xiao Daoist said sincerely. No need to be polite. First, we are all Daoist disciples, and second, you and I are both surnamed Xiao. If I don't help you, who else can I help? Xiao Hua nodded and said. Xiao Daoist heard and immediately blushed. He hurriedly said, "Oh right, my surname is Xiao Jian. I didn't tell you my surname yesterday. I've made a fool of myself." Xiao Hua smiled faintly and didn't say much. "Master," Yuanya looked at Xiao Hua and hurriedly said, "Master has already agreed to let me become your disciple." "When did I agree to accept you as my disciple?" Xiao Hua's face became cold. He waved his hand and said, "You are already old. How can you still cultivate? If I accept you as my disciple, wouldn't it ruin my reputation?" "Yes, master." Yuanya didn't get angry and replied, "Fellow Taoist Xiao Jian hurriedly. Ya's aptitude. If he didn't have a mortal fate and couldn't enter my Taoist sect when he was young, how could he be in this situation? Fellow Taoist, please take pity on Jiaya. Even if you can't accept him as your disciple, you must teach him a few divine abilities so that he can survive." "Oh, what do you mean?" Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. "You don't know?" Xiao Jian looked at Yuanya, who was equally confused, and explained, "Yuanya actually didn't follow me since he was young. He this matter this afternoon. Xiao was lost take take ts meet and that is precisely the case. I asked Dao friend Xiao to explain." Xiao Hua nodded, knowing that Xiao Jian was going to talk about the most important matter. "When I saw you that day, he was almost dead." Xiao Jian looked at Yuanya and said, "That cruel duel arena was waiting for him to die and throw him to the dogs to eat. I couldn't bear to see him being eaten by the dogs, so I wanted to ask the duel arena to release you and let I take him away. But what I didn't expect was that even if he was a dying person, they still wouldn't let him go. They actually asked I for a lot of money before they were willing to release him. I naturally wouldn't agree to it, and I was also unable to do so. After I pestered them endlessly, the duel arena became impatient and proposed a condition. They could let I take the dying you away, but 10 years later, you must return to the duel arena and have a duel with the strongest person in the duel arena. As long as you wins, they will return ya's indenture contract to ya and give you freedom." Wise Xiao Hua stared blankly. "Yuan ya's indenture contract is still in the duel arena's hands." "Yes." Xiao Jian nodded. "Almost 4 years have passed, and there are still 6 years left. You must return to the duel arena. In these 4 years, I naturally wanted to guide Yuan ya's cultivation, but I have the heart, but not the strength. Yes, Yuanya is currently cultivating Dao techniques, and it is impossible for him to reach large success in a short period of time. Not to mention 10 years. Even 50 years is hard to say." Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya, who seemed as if he had just woken up from a dream, and nodded. "Yes, that's why I wanted to entrust you to you." Xiao Jian smiled and said, "I was all alone in this world and was able to live with you for 4 years. I have long regarded him as my nephew, and I really can't bear to see him fall into the duel arena and die in the hands of others." "Yes, I understand," Xiao Hua said indifferently. "The duel arena's matter is nothing. I am currently injured, and it's not very convenient." "Master," no matter how stupid Yuanya was, he understood at this moment and hurriedly called out. "Don't!" Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "I haven't said that I will take you in. Let's talk about it later." "Yes, master." Yuanya's reply was really smooth. Although Xiao Hua didn't agree to take Yuanya in, he was already relaxed. Xiao Jian was also overjoyed and asked tentatively, "Last night, about Taoist Zhao's matter?" Xiao Hua wasn't surprised. Tonight's matter was so big that it was impossible for Xiao Jian to not ask. He had already thought about it, and said while waving his hand, "It's just a medicinal pill that cultivators like us often use to replenish qi and blood. It's nothing. Last night, when you all left the mountain, this Xiao was resting here. That man kowtowed to this statue very sincerely." This Xiao looked at his sincerity and then looked at his wife and child at the foot of the mountain. "This family of 4 is really pitiful. So I casually gave him 1 pill. Of course, I can't move now and can't go down the mountain to personally diagnose her. I don't even know the effect of that medicinal pill. Fortunately, It can be said that saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Xiao Jian's face had a strange expression, as if he wanted to ask something, but felt that it was inappropriate. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "This saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda is a saying of Buddhism. We Taoist cultivators can't relate to it." "It doesn't matter," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "As long as I can see this family of four safe and happy, I will also be satisfied. Isn't it just an ordinary medicinal pill? I can still afford to give it to you." "Master," Yuanya at the side rubbed his hands and called out without any courtesy, "Do you still have this kind of medicinal pill? If you don't call me master, I will give it to you." Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Yes, master." Yuanya nodded. "I won't call you master in the future." Chapter 3173. When Xiao Hua heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly looked at Yuan Ye's expectant eyes, and with a wave of his hand, he took out 2 parasol pills and threw them to Yuan Ye. He said, "Take this after you're injured. Normally, it's useless for cultivation." "Yes, master." Yuan Ye took the parasol pills and scratched his head. He wanted to return one of them to Xiao Hua again. "The effect of this pill is so good. Master should keep one for yourself." "I just want one." Hee. Xiao Hua waved his hand and didn't take it. "You keep it for yourself. If you want to give it to anyone, it's up to you." "Yes, master." When Yuan Ye heard this, he carefully put the 2 parasol pills into his pocket. However, just as he put away, he suddenly took it out again and respectfully handed one to Xiao Jian. He said, "Master, you take one too. You're always injured by the bald donkey from Xiao Jin Temple. You can use this." Xiao Hua's parasol pill was naturally for Yuan Ye to give to Xiao Jian. However, Yuan Ye didn't understand at all. Xiao Jian at the side was really anxious. When he saw Yuan Ye finally come to his senses, he revealed a smile on his face. Who knew that before he could say anything, Yuan Ye would say something like that? His face immediately turned ashen. Xiao Jian unhappily took the parasol pill and carefully put it into his pocket. He looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Thank you, fellow Xiao. No need. This was given to you by Yuan Ye, not by me." Xiao Hua waved his hand and looked at the sky. He said, "You all should go and rest. Perhaps tomorrow there will be more people coming to Rivertide Temple." That's right. My Rivertide Temple is no longer the same as before. Tonight, I'm going to pray for the villagers of General Ridge," Xiao Jian said with a smile. "Although I already know Taoist Zhao's origin, I can't go back on my words." Xiao Hua stood up. "I'm going to cultivate. You all can do as you wish." That Xiao Jian saw Xiao Hua stand up and hurriedly stood up. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. Xiao Hua glanced at him and asked indifferently, "Fellow Taoist, is there anything else? I know that fellow Taoist Xiao will leave the Longevity Town in 10 days. In these 10 days, if there's a sincere person who comes to my Rivertide Temple to pay respects to Taoist Xiao, would Taoist Xiao be willing to help?" Xiao Jian hurriedly asked, "The most important thing is that if fellow Taoist Xiao is willing to help, I will be able to gather enough money to renovate the statue of Taoist Xiao in the Rivertide Temple. It will also bring glory to my Taoist sect. Let's leave it to fate." Xiao Hua smiled and slowly walked out of the main hall. "I'm just an ordinary cultivator, not a Taoist who can reach the heavens. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao." Xiao Jian was overjoyed and bowed in greeting. He believed that with his silver tongue and Xiao Hua's occasional methods, the incense offerings of Jiangtiao Temple would definitely surpass Xiao Jin Temple. However, this thought only lasted for a moment, and he immediately laughed involuntarily. With Xiao Hua's help, how could the Taoist school be defeated in the challenge 10 days later? After 10 days, Xiao Jin Temple will no longer exist in Longevity Town. It doesn't matter if the Jiangtiao Temple doesn't have any incense offerings. All right, fellow Taoist Xiao. Seeing Xiao Hua walk out of the main hall, Xiao Jian suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Oh, is there anything else?" Xiao Hua stopped and asked curiously, "That, I know that fellow Taoist is an expert. Xiao Jian rubbed his hands and asked embarrassedly, but I don't have confidence in my heart. So I want to ask, fellow Taoist cultivation is, what level is it in the first grade of essence energy? Oh, first grade of essence energy? What level? Xiao Hua stared blankly. How would he know what level of essence energy his cultivation was? Previously, when he was in the West Ocean, he saw a sea beast that Taoist leopard called fourth grade essence energy. Moreover, he and the others were also called second and third grade essence energy cultivators by Xiancheng. As for how the essence energy was divided, he didn't really care. No matter what level of essence energy it would still be killed by him. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Taoist Xiao, how are the levels of essence energy divided? To tell you the truth, I have always been in seclusion, so I'm not too sure. Hiss, how is that possible? Xiao Jian sucked in a breath of cold air, and his eyes flashed with extreme suspicion. However, this suspicion slowly disappeared in front of Xiao Hua's smile and gaze that didn't seem to be fake. Then, after the cloud of suspicion, there was a deep sense of loss. He didn't even know how to divide the original levels. How high could the cultivation of this kind of cultivator be? Of course, Xiao Jian immediately felt relieved. If the level of the cultivator was too high, how could the other party be respectful to him? Sai, no matter what, to be able to defeat you, even if you don't enter the level, it's fine. Xiao Jian sighed and waved his hand. Taoist Xiao, it's better if you tell me. Xiao Hua stopped instead, turned around, and asked humbly, All right, since this old man knows that I will have to rely on you in the future, then this old man will let you experience it. Xiao Jian suddenly referred to himself as this old man, and the previous apprehension and caution completely disappeared. Please speak. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart. Xiao Hua, I presume that you also know about the 3 continents? Xiao Jian seemed to be somewhat teasing as he said, If you don't even know about the 3 continents, then this old man will really suspect your origin. The 3 continents are naturally the hidden immortal continent, the Western Paradise, and the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Xiao Hua also laughed. This old man naturally knows about this. Since you know about the 3 continents, then you naturally know that the hidden immortal continent is the origin of Confucian cultivators. The Western Paradise is the origin of Buddhism, and the Thousand Demons' sacred realm is the place where demons run rampant, right? Xiao Jian didn't know whether he was asking Xiao Hua or talking to himself. In any case, without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, he continued, No matter if it is Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, or demons, they all have their own cultivation system, and they all have their own methods of measuring the level of cultivation. This kind of system is unknown to others, and it is also impossible to measure between each other. Therefore, in order to make a simple judgment, according to the suggestion of Confucian cultivators, the 3 continents introduced the levels of origin power. This so-called origin power level is divided into 9 levels, and within each level, it is divided into 3 levels, high, middle, and low. Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, and demons all according to their own strength. These 9 levels of origin power are divided into 27 levels. Do you understand? And this Xiao understands. Xiao Hua nodded. However, Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, and demons, what are their respective cultivation systems? How do they divide their origin power into 9 levels of origin power into 27 levels? If you ask others, you definitely won't know the answer. Xiao Jian's face was full of pride, and he said with a smile, This old man has some knowledge, so I know a bit. Taoist priest, please speak. Let's not talk about demons. Rather than saying that they have their own cultivation system, it's better to say that they rely on their own inheritance and blindly cultivate. Moreover, they don't understand human nature, and they rarely communicate with us humans. Xiao Jian first put aside the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, and Xiao Hua understood that he probably didn't know the secrets of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Buddhism? Xiao Jian's face didn't show any shame. It's just a trivial matter. This old man also didn't ask in detail. I only know that they also have 9 levels of divine ability, similar to the 9 levels of origin power. These 2 levels are Jieshan and Juechen. Jieshan corresponds to the first level of origin power, and Juechen corresponds to the second level of origin power. Then what's after that? Xiao Hua very naturally asked. Didn't this old man already say? Buddhism and my Taoism are mortal enemies. This old man feels disgusted when seeing baldies, so why would I ask more? Xiao Jian waved his hand and said, let's not talk about the disgusting Buddhism. Let this old man talk about Confucian cultivators. All right, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and could only nod. But Xiao Hua couldn't help but count with his fingers, and said with a smile, it seems that this Confucian cultivator's realm isn't 9th level. More or less. Xiao Jian waved his hand, and said, this old man is also not a Confucian cultivator. Knowing this much is already not bad. What else do you want? Hee, that's true. Xiao Hua smiled. He saw that Xiao Jian directly used scholar and scholar to correspond to the 9th level of origin power, and didn't use refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, refining spirit into emptiness, refining emptiness into emptiness, and refining emptiness into emptiness. He already knew that this method of classifying origin power was only a measure of strength, and actually didn't have much relation to the realm. And Xiao Jian also didn't know the specific cultivation realms of Confucian cultivators. Then what about my Taoism's cultivation realms? How does it correspond to the different levels of origin power? Xiao Hua knew that Xiao Jian definitely knew the most about Taoism's cultivation realms. And you also know that my Taoism's cultivation realms are more divided into foundation, establishment, enlightened. Xiao Jian had just opened his mouth when Xiao Hua was greatly surprised and shouted, what? Foundation, establishment is the most basic realm? What? Xiao Jian raised his eyebrows and said puzzledly, in your family's cultivation technique, foundation, establishment isn't the basic cultivation realm? Who? Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said with a smile, Taoist priest, please tell me, I was a bit reckless. Xiao Jian glanced at Xiao Hua and said again, after enlightened is fusion, heart-stirring, soul solitude, gold core, nascent soul, out-of-body, spirit severing, unity, tribulation passing, and Mahayana. Oh, Xiao Hua heard the familiar words gold core, nascent soul, and even spirit severing, and became pensive in his heart. Xiao Jian continued, my Taoism's foundation, establishment, enlightened, and fusion correspond to the lower, middle, and upper levels of the first level of origin power. Heart-stirring and soul solitude correspond to the second level of origin power. Gold core, nascent soul, out-of-body, spirit severing, unity, tribulation passing, and Mahayana correspond to the other levels of origin power from the 3rd level to the 9th level. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood, but he still asked cautiously, Taoist priest Xiao, when true qi transforms into true essence, and true essence condenses in the dantian to form a core, what realm is that? Hearing Xiao Hua's question, Taoist priest Xiao became even more discouraged, and said almost unhappily, I don't have any cultivation. How would I know this? Could it be you've already formed a core? Fellow Taoist Xiao, sometimes it's better not bite off more than you can chew. Chapter 3174. Zhang Xiaohua's heart was greatly shaken. Who else could it be? Wasn't it the last deity transformation cultivator that Zhang Xiaohua hadn't encountered after coming to the Xiaoyu continent? Xian Lu Sex Chan, Si Miao? Zhang Xiaohua steadied herself and looked over. She saw that not far from Feng Shu, there was also a faint illusory figure looking at her, with eyes full of pleasant surprise. Zhang Xiaohua was greatly surprised. She really couldn't imagine. How did she suddenly become a treasure that everyone wanted to snatch? Chan Si Miao, what's the meaning of this? This thing was first encountered by this old man, And it was also this old man who made the first move. You don't have any reason, yet you also want to get involved? Feng Shu sneered. Thing. Zhang Xiaohua's heart went cold, and she inwardly sneered. I am actually a thing. What's wrong? Feng Shu, you're not happy? I was wondering why you repeatedly prevented me from investigating this little thing's meridians in the demon-resisting valley. It turns out that this little thing's body still has such a universe. Chan Si Miao sneered. Perhaps that soul-searching technique of yours was also deliberately used. If it was an idiot chi refining cultivator, wouldn't it be easier for you to take over his body? Feng Shu coldly snorted and didn't answer. Only after a long while did he say, since you know the importance of this person to this old man, you presumably also know that this old man must have him. You can leave now. Haha, it's precisely because I know his importance that this old man naturally also covets him. He's important to you, but isn't he equally important to this old man? But don't forget, this old man is also a spirit-severing cultivator, and in the future, I will also encounter the danger of crossing the tribulation. With such wide meridians and a sturdy body as a cauldron, how can this old man give it up? Chan Si Miao laughed and said, moreover, although his cultivation is only at the qi refining stage, the amount of true qi in his meridians is actually so exquisite, almost comparable to that of the foundation establishment stage. He must have cultivated a special mental cultivation method. Chan Si Miao, do you still want to say that the most valuable thing is that he used his middle dantian as a sea of qi and didn't cultivate his lower dantian at all? For you and me, as long as we seize his body, on one hand, it's easy to cultivate our sex martial arts in his lower dantian without any conflicts with other martial arts. On the other hand, we can use this thing's middle dantian to cultivate others' middle dantian to cultivate another dantian, and it won't have any conflicts with other martial arts. On the other hand, we can use this thing's middle dantian's middle dantian to cultivate. Meow. Chan Si Miao said. Chan Si Miao clapped his hands and said, the most valuable thing is that this person's physical body is innately tough. Not only does he not have to worry about the thunder tribulation in the future, but he also doesn't have to endure the intense pain when he takes over the body. His original body's divine sense won't deteriorate too much. When the two of them spoke, they didn't use telepathy, and they didn't hide it from Zhang Xiaohua. These words entered Zhang Xiaohua's ears, and Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He really couldn't imagine that he actually had so many benefits on his body. It was as if he was tailor-made for others to seize his body. Feng Shu, tell me, this is a good thing that this old man has never seen before. This old man can let go? Chan Si Miao said with a cold smile. Chan Si Miao, do you think this old man can let go? Feng Shu took a step forward and released his aura, closing in on Chan Si Miao. This old man is also a spirit-severing cultivator. Feng Shu, do you think you can do it? Chan Si Miao also raised his leg, and the two's auras collided, stirring up the surrounding heaven-earth yuan qi like a huge wave in the sea. A hurricane rose from between the two of them, howling and blowing in all directions. Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing at the side, was like Xiaohua in water, floating up and down a few times before floating into the distance. Seeing this, Feng Shu waved his hand, and the hurricane disappeared without a trace. Then, Zhang Xiaohua felt another wave of dizziness, and the entire night sky turned upside down. When Zhang Xiaohua regained his senses, he was no longer in midair. Instead, he was in a gray area. The storage ring floated quietly beside him, and there was also a bag of dirt and a strange Dharma artifact at his feet. Zhang Xiaohua recognized that Dharma artifact. It was Qiufeng's, and that bag had fallen from Qiufeng's mountain when he was killed. Looking up, Feng Shu and Chan Si Miao were still standing in midair. Feng Shu smiled and said, Chan Si Miao, you're quite brave. You actually didn't escape and followed this old man here. What's there to leave for? This old man is the same as you. We're both spirit-severing cultivators. Even if you kill this old man, my main body is still here. Even if this spirit-severing cultivator loses this spirit-severing cultivator, I will tell this matter to the Alliance Master. This old man believes that the Alliance Master will be more interested in this matter than this old man. Chan Si Miao said indifferently. Are you determined to go against this old man? Feng Shu was furious. Having a good cauldron to possess is the last method to successfully pass the minor heavenly tribulation. This old man has no reason to go against my own chance. Chan Si Miao was still indifferent. This old man believes that fellow Taoist Feng won't be willing to see a third person know about this other than me. Feng Shu's expression was uncertain. After a long while, he said gloomily, this old man naturally doesn't want to do this, but there's only one of this. If fellow Taoist Chan uses it, how am I going to use it? Fellow Taoist Chan, don't tell me you're planning to share a soul with me? This old man also just found out about such a good cauldron. Where did this idea come from? If fellow Taoist Feng has any good ideas, please tell me. Chan Si Miao said with a smile. Previously, I only had the thought of monopolizing it. Who would have thought that you would appear out of nowhere? Feng Shu sneered and looked at Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing on the ground with an ashen face. He said also, fellow Taoist Chan, you didn't know the gravity of the situation from start. You exposed my plans. Now, it's too late to deceive this fellow. What's the big deal? Can't we just use the soul-searching technique again? We'll just make him an idiot and leave him alive. Chan Si Miao said disapprovingly. If that's the case, do I need to lower my voice and deceive him? Feng Shu's face was filled with anger. If I use this soul-searching technique again, this guy's mind will collapse. This old man's consciousness will also perish if I go in again. Isn't this asking this old man to commit suicide? Chan Si Miao came to a realization. He thought for a moment and bowed deeply. Fellow Taoist Feng, this matter, I was careless. Please forgive me. However, fellow Taoist, you don't have to be too concerned. I know a small mystic technique. There's no need to search his soul. I can erase this short-term memory. What could Feng Shu do? He knew that Chan Si Miao would definitely not let go. He could only wave his hand and say, forget it. Who knows if your mystic technique will work? It's not wrong to not know, but later, during the discussion, fellow Taoist Chan will have to take half a step back. Chapter 3175. Taoist Priest Xiao. Xiao Hua laughed. A straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. Others may not know whether Taoist priest has cultivation or not, but how could I not know? What? You actually? Taoist priest Xiao turned pale with fright, almost jumping up. You were really sent by them? Who are they? Xiao Hua laughed. Taoist priest Xiao is too suspicious. Could it be that if you weren't sent by them, they wouldn't know that you have spiritual sense? You. Taoist priest Zhao's face turned ashen, but immediately after, his face showed ecstasy again. Just as he was about to speak, Xiaohua immediately waved his hand. Don't talk nonsense. You should first answer this Zhao's question. Yes. Taoist priest Xiao almost stuttered in his surprise. True essence condensing into a core is naturally the golden core realm that all Taoist disciples dream of. Other than this, what else is possible? Could it be? Taoist priest Xiao, oh no, senior Xiao is already third grade essence force? Third grade essence force? Xiao Hua laughed. This Xiao wants it, but it doesn't want this Xiao. Do you think this Xiao is third grade essence force? Xiao Hua's words were naturally ambiguous, but in a normal person's impression, Xiao Hua naturally admitted that he was not third grade essence force. No, not possible. Taoist priest Xiao seemed to suddenly wake up at this time, shaking his head vigorously, trying to throw away his unrealistic delusions. Taoist priest Xiao has naturally terminated meridians. It's not possible for him to enter the foundation establishment realm, not to mention consecration and fusion. But finally, Taoist priest Xiao struggled like a drowning person grabbing onto a water plant, saying, but that bald donkey from the small gold temple is at most in the early stage of the benevolence realm. He can be considered a low first-grade essence force. If Taoist priest Shao can enter the ranks, then you can defeat the Buddhist sect and expel that group of bald donkeys from Longevity Town. Taoist priest Shao, are you in the ranks or not? Xiao Hua, smiled slightly, turning around to leave, and said indifferently, "This Xiao can be considered in the ranks. Looks like if this Xiao doesn't say it, you won't be able to sleep tonight." Taoist Xiao was overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Since Taoist Xiao is at the lower first rank, then the challenge in 10 days will depend on you." Xiao Hua flicked his sleeves and ignored Xiao Jian's bow. Xiao Jian seemed to be an unspeakably snobbish person. His attitude towards Xiao Hua changed several times. Xiao Hua originally had the cultivation of a Buddhist sect, so he only treated the fight between Xiao Jin Temple and Jiang Chao Temple as a joke. However, the arrogant words of Xiao Jin Temple's monk Mingyu, who even proposed to expel Xiao Jian and Yuanya from Longevity Town, was not something Xiao Hua was willing to see. Therefore, this was also one of the reasons why Xiao Hua helped Xiao Jian. After all, Xiao Hua was also from the Tao sect. It was impossible for him to watch Taoism be expelled from Longevity Town by the Buddhist sect. Of course, 10 days was indeed a short period of time for Xiao Hua. It was impossible for him to completely clean out the earth crystal Yao milk in his meridians, dantian, and flesh. However, looking at Monk Mingyu's fat body and Yuanya's ability to fight 1 against 5, there was no reason why Xiao Hua couldn't sweep through Xiao Jin Temple's monks. As for Longevity Academy and the people Chansher Mingyu relied on, Xiao Hua didn't care about them at all. Even if he couldn't recover to his peak state when facing some foundation establishment or even Jindan stage cultivators, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage just by relying on some yellow and fire talismans. It was exactly as Xiao Hua said. He indeed had the cultivation of a 4th-rank origin energy, but right now, his meridians and flesh were filled with earth crystal Yao milk. He couldn't use any divine abilities, so he really was just in the ranks. The 3 lonely and helpless Taoist cultivators of Jiang Chao Temple saw the light and were filled with hope for their future. One closed his eyes and meditated. One meditated and prayed for blessings, and one even laid down on the branch of a banyan tree, looking up at the stars in the night sky. It was unknown what he was thinking. Less than 5 li north of Longevity Town, there was a hill several li in size. Xiao Jin Temple, which was a dozen times larger than Jiang Chao Temple, was built on top of this hill. At this moment, inside Xiao Jin Temple, the rhythmic sound of a wooden fish in the main hall was heard along with the loud and clear sound of a bell. The fat monk Mingyu, who was wearing a bright kisaya, put down the small wooden mallet in his hand. He looked at the 30-something people in the main hall with great satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Today's evening class ends here. You all can go back and rest." "Yes, Abba," the 30-something people replied in unison. It was very loud and resounding in the main hall, making Monk Mingyu even happier. After all the monks left, Monk Mingyu stood up, tidied up the kasaya on his body, and turned his head to look at the slightly old Shakyamuni Buddha statue in the main hall. He respectfully knelt down, kowtowed to the ground, and said in a low voice, "My Buddha, disciple Mingyu, has been in this Xiao Jin Temple for more than 10 years. Previously, there were only 3 to 5 people in Xiao Jin Temple, but now there are a lot of people reaching 32. My Buddha must have seen disciples' hard work in these 10 years. Of course, disciples' hard work is incomparable to my Buddha's boundless Dharma. The reason why Xiao Jin Temple is so prosperous is all because of my Buddha's mercy, and not because of disciples' hard work. Disciple is willing to take root in Longevity Town's Xiao Jin Temple, in this corner of hidden immortal continent, to plant my Buddha's mercy deep into the hearts of mortals, to let them know, in this world, there's only Buddha, only Nirvana is their best home. Only by devoutly worshiping my Buddha can they get rid of evil, can they cut off evil. Amaba. After that, Monk Mingyu softly muttered for a long time, kowtowed again, and respectfully retreated from the main hall. After Monk Mingyu returned to the abbot's meditation room, he changed his kasaya into a white monk robe. Pung pung. Someone knocked on the door of the meditation room. Who is it? Monk Mingyu frowned, feeling somewhat displeased. Senior brother Mingyu, its disciple Ming Fa. A respectful voice sounded from outside the door. Ba. So it's Ming Fa. Monk Mingyu's lips curled into an inexplicable smile. He walked to the front of the door and personally opened it. Ba. Senior brother is too polite. The one standing outside the door was the monk who followed behind Monk Mingyu in the afternoon. At this moment, he had a smile on his face, and his palms were clasped together as he said respectfully, "You only need to say the word, and disciple will enter. Why do you need to personally open the door?" Junior brother Ming Fa. For you to come so late, there must be something extremely important. Monk Mingyu invited Ming Fa into the room and said with a smile, "To be able to rack your brains for my Shao Jin temple, to be able to work tirelessly for the prosperity of my Buddhism sect, you are a meritorious servant of my Buddhism sect. This poor monk naturally has to personally open the door. Thank you for your trouble, senior brother." Ming Fa sat on the praying mat somewhat cautiously. Monk Mingyu personally held the pot, poured a cup of tea, and then asked with a smile, "May I know what is the matter, junior brother?" Chapter 3176. Reporting to Senior Brother. Ming Fa picked up the tea, took a sip, and said, "Actually, it's nothing important. It's just that after finishing my homework, I returned to my room and thought of the challenge at the Temple of the River and Tide on the 10th day. I couldn't help but think of the situation 10 years ago when you came to the Shao Jin Temple alone with a warning letter. Then I thought of the prosperity of the Shao Jin Temple in the past 10 years. Now, even the Longevity Academy doesn't dare to look down on the Shao Jin Temple. They took the initiative to exchange pointers with the Shao Jin Temple on the day of the Immortal and Buddha ceremony. This was something I didn't even dare to think about 10 years ago. Ba, when I think of this, I can't sit still in my room. The development of the Shao Jin Temple these years is all due to Senior Brother Abbott's contribution. Therefore, I came here to thank Senior Brother Abbott for the effort you put in for the Shao Jin Temple." Ba, Ming Fa's words obviously had a faint flattery, but in Zen Master Mingyu's ears, it was very pleasing to the ear. Zen Master Mingyu unconsciously chanted the name of Buddha and smiled. Junior Marshal Brother Ming Fa really knows this poor monk's heart. Just now, this poor monk was talking about the development of my Shao Jin Temple in the past 10 years in front of Buddha. I talked about how, when this poor monk first came to Shao Jin Temple, there were only 2 junior martial brothers, Ming Fa and Ming Shan. I didn't expect junior brother to also be so emotional. It seems that our cultivation is still lacking. This heart of a dry well realm is still very far away. Ba, my Buddha is merciful. Please forgive me for my unstable state of mind. Ming Fa hurriedly put his palms together and said very sincerely, "Ha, junior brother Ming Fa. If Buddha sees that the small gold temple has become so prosperous in our hands, I'm afraid he won't punish you." Zen Master Mingyu immediately curled his lips and said with a smile, "For the Shao Jin Temple, for the Buddhism sect, I'm willing to accept Buddha's punishment." Ming Fa also said, "Junior brother, please have some tea." Zen Master Mingyu raised his cup and took a sip himself. He looked at the night sky outside the Zen door and sighed. Junior brother is right. Although we are Buddhists, we should have a pure heart and few desires. We should serve Buddha wholeheartedly. But in the end, we are just ordinary people. After all, we still have this stinky body. Seeing the Shao Jin Temple being so prosperous, how could we not be happy? How could he not be proud? Back then, when this old monk came to Small Gold Temple, the first person I paid my respects to was Immortal Academy's Zhu Junfeng. Although that Confucian Dean Zhu was very courteous to this old monk could tell from his disdainful gaze that he was rejecting my Buddhist sect. Yes, Senior Brother Abbot is right. In the 3 continents, other than the Western Paradise, which is the pure land of my Buddhist sect. The hidden immortal continent and the thousand demons sacred realm are not places that my Buddhist light shines upon. Within the thousand demon sacred territory, who knows how many disciples who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the development of our Buddhist sect have been buried in the mouths of demons. On the hidden immortal continent, there is the resistance of Confucian cultivators. The spread of our Buddhist sect's dharma has also been greatly hindered. We disciples of the Buddhist sect have a long way to go. Ming Fa nodded his head in agreement. That's right, junior brother Ming Fa. This is the voice of millions of Buddhist sect disciples. We are not afraid of blood and tears. We are not afraid of difficulties. We just want to illuminate the entire 3 continents with Buddhist light. Zen Master Ming Yu's face showed a trace of redness. His eyes also flashed with fanaticism. Unfortunately, Ming Fa slightly clenched his teeth. The matters of this world are a test for us Buddhist disciples. In this small immortal town, not only does Immortal Academy have Ruo Tong long, tightly protecting their sphere of influence, even Taoism has revived from the ashes. A long time ago declined River Tide Temple. A wandering Taoist dares to go against my small gold temple, challenging the dignity of my Buddhist sect. Hee, I won't hide it from junior brother, Zen Master Ming Yu said with a smile. Back then when this old monk saw that Taoist surnamed Zhao's face, I looked down on him from the bottom of my heart. What the hell, a scoundrel wants to challenge my small gold temple in Immortal Town. Who does he think he is? Indeed, Ming Fa said with a smile. I remember the first time this old monk saw that so-called Taoist Zhao. He was no different from a beggar. However, this beggar-like person actually went against my small gold temple in all aspects. Zen Master Ming Yu said with a sigh, if not for the fact that this River Tide Temple doesn't have many Taoist disciples, perhaps in these 3 to 4 years, that River Tide Temple really could catch up to my small gold temple. This can't help but make me think of our small gold temple back then. At that time, in Zhu Juanfeng's eyes, you and I probably weren't much different from this Taoist Zhao, right? Hee, how could it be that simple? My Buddhist sect's dharma is boundless. What does his Taoist sect have? It's nothing more than some tricks. It's fine to deceive ordinary people, but in front of us, it's just a joke. I believe that Immortal Academy knows all of this. The problem is, Zen Master Ming Yu smiled bitterly. My small gold temple is entangled with River Tide Temple. So many years of pure reputation will turn into flowing water. Even if I can't see River Tide Temple clearly, how will the secular people of Immortal Town view my small gold temple? In the past, they compared Small Gold Temple to Immortal Academy, but now they want to compare Small Gold Temple and River Tide Temple on the same level. At this point, Zen Master Ming Yu said with some disappointment, I originally didn't want to say this. Yesterday, Minister Liu didn't even invite my Small Gold Temple's monks. So why did Ming Fa Shitty insist on bringing a few disciples to Minister Liu's home? Although Minister Liu didn't want to embarrass Small Gold Temple. So he gave half of the ritual to you. But can't you use your brain to think? How can my Buddhist sect's ritual be compared to Taoists? How can they be compared? Yes. Ming Fa's face showed some disapproval, but he still lowered his head and agreed. The most terrible thing is, Zen Master Ming Yu didn't stop talking and continued to reprimand. After the ritual, you actually had a conflict with River Tide Temple. You and your group of close to 10 people against River Tide Temple's 2 people. If others knew, it would be strange if my small gold temple wasn't laughed to death. Senior Abbot, I know I was wrong. Ming Fa had no choice but to lower his head and explain, it wasn't that I insisted on going to Minister Liu's home to fight with River Tide Temple for the ritual. It was that this ritual was agreed upon the last time Minister Liu came to my small gold temple to worship Buddha. Who knows what Taoist Zhao said to Minister Liu? I'm afraid he sowed discord and said that my small gold temple was in the wrong. That was why Minister Liu was persuaded to invite River Tide Temple over. I only went to Minister Liu's home as agreed, but I only bumped into River Tide Temple. And Minister Liu also said it clearly. He was careless and mixed up the matter. Sai, forget it. 10 days later, this kind of thing won't happen again. Shitty, you have to take this as a lesson and never let it happen again. Zen Master Mingyu sighed and didn't want to pursue the matter. Senior Abbot, 10 days later, which Shu will be coming? Why will he come? Ming Fa's eyes lit up and asked curiously. If I'm not wrong, it should be Yinlin Temple's Shu Xinghai. Speaking of Xinghai, Zen Master Mingyu's eyes lit up as if he was envious and jealous. It was a rare look. Senior Abbot, Ming Fa was even more curious and hurriedly said, Didn't you come from Yinlin Temple? 10 years ago, you were entrusted with an important task and came to my small gold temple. Then you must be familiar with Shu Xinghai. What kind of expert is he? Zen Master Mingyu laughed and said, My Yinlin temple has thousands of monks. Although they are all devoted to Buddha, they all have their own responsibilities. Shu Xinghai is my Buddhist protector and has Buddhist supernatural powers. How can I know him? I have only seen Shu Xinghai a few times on some occasions. Speaking of Buddhist supernatural powers, Senior Abbot, you have to explain it to Shitty. Ming Fa's eyes were even more fervent. For us small gold temple Buddhas, other than Shitty who came from Yinlin Temple, we all entered Buddhism from small gold temple. We are really ignorant. By the way, although the monks of small gold temple have practiced some martial arts in order to protect the temple, they're still far from Yuanya of Jiangchao Temple. If we all practice Buddhist supernatural powers, who would be afraid of a wandering Taoist? When Zen Master Mingyu heard this, a hint of awkwardness flashed across his face. He put his palms together and said, Junior Brother Ming Fa, fighting and killing should be the responsibility of the Buddhist guardians. We only need to spread the Buddhist Dharma and teach the ordinary people to be good. Senior Brother, Ming Fa smiled bitterly. The problem is that our small gold temple doesn't have a protector. If we had one, would we still be afraid of Yuanya of Jiangchao Temple? Even if there was that old Taoist and that young Taoist who just appeared today, I don't think we need to be afraid. Speaking of this, Ming Fa said with some hatred, I think that Taoist Xiao wants to get back last night's embarrassment, so he challenged our small gold temple in public. He thinks that we can't deal with Yuanya alone. He wants to laugh at our small gold temple. He really didn't expect that Senior Brother Abbot would take advantage of the situation to propose a competition in 10 days. He even proposed that whoever loses would leave Longevity Town, forcing him to a dead end. He lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. How can we compare to Martial Uncle Xinghai's cultivation? Umaba, Zen Master Mingyu chanted. I was also stunned by Taoist Zhao's anger this afternoon and lost my cool. That's why I proposed that bet. Actually, now that I think about it, Taoist Xiao came later. His existence doesn't matter at all, whether he is here or not. Jiangchao Temple is still a broken Taoist temple. On the contrary, our small gold temple is in a disadvantageous position. If Martial Uncle Xinghai didn't come, and it was someone else, there might really be a problem. Then what should we do? Ming Fa was also shocked and said anxiously. Zen Master Mingyu smiled. Of course, then again, even if Martial Uncle Xinghai didn't come, Yinlin Temple will send a Martial Uncle of the Transcendence Realm. That Yuanya is definitely not his opponent. You, and I can rest assured. Chapter 3177. Chan Si Miao smiled apologetically and said, that's easy. If it's not something important, why can't I take a step back? Zhang Xiaohua saw that the two of them didn't avoid her and only treated her as an object. She also knew that her life wasn't in danger. Zhang Xiaohua sat on the ground and stared straight at Xiu Feng's magic tool. She didn't know what he was thinking. After a while, Feng Shu said, How about this, fellow Taoist Chan? I have an idea, but I don't know if it's suitable. Feng Shu, please tell me. I'm all ears. Yes, this cauldron is the last resort for us to get through the heavenly tribulation. If we all get through the heavenly tribulation safely, We won't need this cauldron. So, I was thinking, instead of fighting over this cauldron now, why don't we put away first? Chan Si Miao's eyes lit up, and he nodded. That's right. We're only in the middle stage of the soul formation stage. There's still some time before we pass the minor tribulation. Why should we fight to the death now? Why don't we use it when we pass the minor tribulation in the future? Also, if fellow Taoist Chan successfully passes the tribulation, we won't have to fight over it, right? Feng Shu flattered him. Hee. Thank you for your kind words. Chan Si Miao smiled and said, also, although our cultivation levels are similar, we won't pass the tribulation at the same time. How about this? Let's make an agreement. Whoever passes the tribulation first gets to use the cauldron first. If the person who passes the tribulation first succeeds, the cauldron will be given to the person who passes the tribulation later. What do you think? Hee, very good. I like it. Feng Shu clapped his hands and said, it's decided then. However, when he looked at Zhang Xiaohua, Feng Shu frowned and said, we can make an agreement like this in the future, but what about now? This old man originally planned to let this guy go to my Immortal Ascension sect first. After this old man is done with the Imperial Demon Valley, I will take him in as a disciple and use my sect's cultivation method to cultivate him. In the future, when I possess his body, he will have a good foundation. Chan Si Miao was also in a difficult position. According to his thoughts, naturally, he also wanted to get Zhang Xiaohua into his Immortal Music sect and use the Immortal Music sect's cultivation techniques to cultivate her. In the future, when he wanted to possess her, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Of course, at this moment, it didn't matter who took Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua was doomed, but how could they let the other party take her? Why don't we find another sect and let him stay there? Feng Shu suggested. Don't. Chan Si Miao shook his head like a rattle drum. As long as such a good cauldron is placed in Dawn Rain Continent, all the cultivators who are about to transcend their tribulations will definitely fight over it. We absolutely can't let any sect know about it. Of course, Chan Si Miao did not say one more thing. Who knows what the other sects have to do with you? If you did something, how would I know? Perhaps even if I was the first to use the cauldron, I would still fall into your trap. At this point, this train of thought had no meaning to continue discussing it. The two of them did not trust each other, so how could they be at ease with other sects? The two of them stood facing each other quietly. After a long while, Chan Si Miao urged, fellow Taoist Feng, could it be that there's no other way? Could it be that we're going to imprison this guy somewhere? Or let this guy cultivate alone in Dawn Rain Continent? Feng Shu's eyes lit up. He clapped and said, fellow Taoist Chan is right. Why can't we? Where does fellow Taoist Feng want to imprison this guy? Chan Si Miao was slightly stunned. It's not good to imprison him. After all, this cauldron is someone we want to possess in the future. Imprison him for a long time will be detrimental to our future development. Fellow Taoist Feng, don't tell me you're going to throw him to Dawn Rain Continent. Chan Si Miao said in disbelief. If he's discovered by others, how can we still have a chance? Fellow Taoist Chan, have you forgotten that the big hide in the city and the small hide in the wilderness? Even if you imprison this guy somewhere, he'll still be discovered by others. Furthermore, there will be many chances of him being discovered. Why don't you just let him cultivate in Dawn Rain Continent? There are countless cultivators in Dawn Rain Continent. Who would recognize such a lowly cultivator? Furthermore, if the two of us join hands to restrict this guy's middle dantian, who else would be able to discover it other than cultivators above the void refinement realm? How could such an insignificant cultivator be discovered by a cultivator with a higher cultivation base than us? Even if this guy's aptitude is very good, but there's no need to wait until then. You and I can transcend the minor heavenly tribulation, right? Fellow Taoist Feng is indeed wise. Chan Si Miao clapped again. However, he immediately felt bewildered. If this guy doesn't have our guidance and only starts from Qi Refinement Realm, I'm afraid his lifespan won't be enough. Feng Shu smiled bitterly. Could it be that fellow Taoist Chan has a better idea? If fellow Taoist Chan is still worried, why don't you let me bring him back to the immortal sect? Of course, Chan Si Miao shook his head. Then, Feng Shu whispered a few words to Chan Si Miao. Chan Si Miao was shocked at first. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua and nodded slightly. If fellow Taoist Feng thinks so, then I can only agree. Then, Feng Shu said again, since that's the case, the two of us will swear a hard oath. From today onwards, the two of us will never reveal this matter to anyone, including our own disciples. Furthermore, no disciple of the Immortal Ascension sect or the Immortal Music sect can give this guy any guidance. Wherever this guy goes, where he lives, whether he cultivates or not, it has nothing to do with us. Yes, that means that before we transcend the minor heavenly tribulation, we are absolutely forbidden to have any contact with this guy. Only when one of us transcends the heavenly tribulation can we appear together to capture this guy. Yes, if you and I want to do anything to this guy, we must discuss it with the other party. Only when both of us agree and both of us are present at the same time can we do anything. Also, if this guy is discovered by others, we must take action at the same time to cover up this matter. No matter what method we use, we must kill that guy. But what if it's an old ghost who's transcending the heavenly tribulation? Then forget it. Let's preserve our lives first. Also, what if there's any change in this guy? This is not possible, right? It's better to be safe than sorry. Fellow Taoist, let's make this clear first. All right, if there's any change, we can investigate it. However, if one of us goes, we must inform the other. Neither of us can go looking for this bastard alone. I'll say the same thing again. This matter must not be known by others. All right, we'll do as fellow Taoist Feng says. Seeing that the two of them were almost done discussing, Chan Si Miao thought for a moment and nodded his head in agreement. Then, the two of them dripped a drop of blood and mixed it together. In front of this drop of blood, they made a heart oath and pointed at the drop of blood. The drop of blood split into two and turned into two strange runes that flew to their foreheads and disappeared. Fellow Taoist Chan, it's time for you to use your secret technique. Seeing that they had made a hard oath, Feng Shu pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and said indifferently, the memories of the past few days shouldn't be left behind. Well said. Chan Si Miao stretched out his hand, and 10,000 broken fireflies flew out. Zhang Xiaohua flew into the air with the broken fireflies. In the hands of a soul formation cultivator, Zhang Xiaohua was like an ant. He had no power to fight back. The moment the broken fireflies fell on him, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a kind of sadness. The sadness of being a fish on a chopping block, the sadness of being an ant. This sadness didn't decrease even as his consciousness gradually blurred. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's ashen expression, Feng Shu wasn't surprised. He looked around and waved his hand. The storage ring flew into his hand and disappeared. The bag and strange-shaped magic tools on the ground also disappeared. Even Zhang Xiaohua's clothes were taken by Feng Shu. Then, Feng Shu said to Zhang Xiaohua, little guy, I wanted you to raise him like a pig, but now I have no choice but to raise him like a sheep. Your fate was already decided when you saw us. Of course, it's not like you don't have any chances now. First, you can pray to the heavens and ask the heavens to reduce the heavenly lightning when fellow Taoist Chan and I transcend the tribulation so that we can safely transcend it. Fellow Taoist Chan and I promise you that as long as we transcend the lightning tribulation, we will immediately release you. Second, you can also cultivate diligently. As long as you transcend the tribulation before us, don't worry. We don't have to do anything. The small heavenly tribulation from the soul formation will definitely destroy this restriction. Zhang Xiaohua only listened in a daze. His eyes were straight, as if there was no spirit in them. Or you can do what you did just now. You don't want your life and self-destruct, turn around, and reincarnate. Feng Shu ignored his reaction and continued. However, this old man has to remind you that if you disintegrate, the restriction that Chan Si Miao and I placed in your dantian will immediately alert us, and we will immediately rush over. before your corpse turns cold, we will do something else to ensure that we can use it when we go through the tribulation. Of course, this is under the condition that you know who you are and remember what happened today." Feng Shu seemed to still be saying something, but Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness was already blurred. It was as if he had fallen into a gray space. There was no possession, no furnace, no pain, no sadness, fellow Taoist Feng. Seeing Xiao Hua standing in the air with an expressionless face, Chan Si Miao smiled and said, "I was fortunate enough to not disappoint you. Now that it's time to seal it, I wonder if fellow Taoist will make a move first? Or will I make a move first? Hee, you and I will make a move at the same time." Feng Shu smiled faintly. "Just now I thought of something. It seems that your immortal music sect and my immortal ascension sect both have half of the incomplete heaven and earth dual forms devil sealing formation, right? Fellow Taoist Chan, don't tell me that you haven't studied it properly." "Ha ha ha," Chan Si Miao laughed and clapped his hands. "I also have the same idea. If we use this incomplete immortal formation to seal this guy, even void refinement realm cultivators or even higher cultivators won't be able to break it." Not only that, a trace of ruthlessness flashed through Feng Shu's eyes. "Not only do you, and I want to seal this guy's middle dantian, we also want to seal his Naiwan palace so that he can't cultivate normally. Furthermore, fellow Taoist Chan has the advantage in the middle dantian seal, while I has the advantage in the Naiwan palace seal. These two seals are connected by the heaven and earth dual forms devil sealing formation. Even if the old ghost Du Jie comes to break the seal and take over this guy's body, we will make him suffer. All right, let's do as fellow Taoist Feng says." Chan Si Miao laughed loudly and waved his hands. Countless mysterious spells were cast one after another. Countless hurricanes rushed into his hands from 100 li in the sky and gradually drew countless white brilliance. At the same time, Feng Shu did the same. Wherever he waved his spells, countless black brilliance was also produced. For a moment, the color of heaven and earth changed. Rumble, thunder faintly appeared in the sky. It was as if the heavens were mourning for Xiao Hua, who had just stepped into the dawn rain continent and hadn't seriously looked at the beautiful scenery around him. Boom! After an extremely loud sound, countless air waves rushed in all directions. Seeing the two layers of black and white seals fuse together and entering Xiao Hua's Naiwan palace and middle dantian without any obstruction, Chan Si Miao and Feng Shu raised their heads and looked at each other with a dignified expression. At the same time, they raised their hands. A white brilliance like a silk was drawn out from Xiao Hua's middle dantian and swam extremely slowly toward the Naiwan palace. At the same time, a black brilliance like a black line was produced in the Naiwan palace and welcomed the white silk. Even the avatars of the two spirit-severing cultivators were extremely solemn at this time. Their gazes were fixed on the black and white silk and didn't dare to be negligent. The strange thing was that the two gossamers were like ants. Every time they swam an inch, the void seemed to be about to collapse. Every time they swam an inch, the two avatars also became a bit dimmer. It seemed that at this time, even the two avatars couldn't support this immortal seal. Woo! The moment the two gossamers touched, a mournful wail like a ghost and a howl like a wolf suddenly appeared. A strong fluctuation followed. The two gossamers instantly turned gray and entered Zhang Xiaohua's body. It quickly rushed in all directions. The wind and clouds in the sky changed again. This seal actually triggered a celestial phenomenon. Shua! Thousands of crystal lights burst out from the two avatars. The avatars of the two spirit-severing cultivators, Chan Si Miao and Feng Shu, rapidly dimmed and then turned into specks of light and disappeared in midair. Rumble! Wherever the fluctuation passed, countless lightning flashed and thunder roared from the sky. There was also a torrential downpour. It was as if the heavens were crying and also as if the heavens were angry. Following the thunderstorm, Zhang Xiaohua's naked body fell from the sky. Two sparkling tears hung from the corners of his eyes. It was unknown whether they were tears of the heavens or his own tears. The rain continued for several days, and the lightning flashed in the sky for several days. It was impossible for the anger to not have an end. When the anger had no target to vent, the clouds gradually parted and the rain stopped. A seven-colored rainbow hung in the sky like a giant opened eye, revealing a strong sense of pity. Under the eyebrows of the giant eye, a black dot gradually got closer. When it got closer, it was a magic treasure that looked like a small boat flying over. However, the strange thing was that there was no one on the magic treasure. It seemed to be an ownerless magic treasure. However, when the magic treasure flew over a mountain stream, the light of the setting sun reflected on the magic treasure. A cultivator in a green Taoist robe suddenly sat up from the magic treasure. That's right, he sat up and even stretched his back. The cultivator looked at the sunlight reflected on the mountain peak and smacked his lips. Sigh, I just closed my eyes and another day has passed. Time is too short. At this point, the cultivator had already stood up. He tidied his Taoist robe and muttered to himself, "This old man has been waiting outside the valley for so long, but I still haven't snatched anything good. Why did all the spirit stones in the world run into other people's pockets? Why didn't a single piece run into this Zhao's storage bag? Don't tell me I have to return to Yellow Flower Ridge empty-handed again today." The cultivator said in a bored tone as he looked around. The rain from before was really heavy, and the mountain stream was full of flowing water. The water in the stream was very muddy, and it flowed everywhere. On both sides of the mountain stream, many small trees and branches were blown down by the strong wind. Many mountain rocks were also shattered by the lightning, rolling down from the top of the mountain. The mountain peak was in a mess. Io, is this a person? A white flower suddenly appeared from the dark green leaves and was reflected in the cultivator's eyes. The cultivator cried out involuntarily. Wasn't this white flower person the Sealjong Xiaohua? She just rushed into the mountain stream along with the heavy rain. This person is actually still alive. The cultivator landed and immediately discovered with his divine sense. He couldn't help but frown. If she's dead, it's easy to deal with. I can just bury her. But this person, forget it. Let's bring her back to Yellow Flower Ridge first. After waking her up, we'll send her down the mountain. Immediately, the cultivator took out a Taoist robe from his storage bag and casually draped it over Zhang Xiaohua's body. He carried her onto the flying boat. The flying boat rushed into the sky and quickly left. Zhang Xiaohua's story in Dawn Rain Continent was spread out along with the flying boat. Chapter 3178. That's good. Ming Fa heaved a sigh of relief and asked again, "Senior brother, what is the Transcendence realm that you mentioned?" "I don't know much, so I'll answer your questions today." Hearing Ming Fa's question, Zen, "Master Ming, you had no choice but to answer. When I was in Yunlin Temple, I occasionally chatted with Martial Uncle while he was preaching about Tao. We talked about the 9 realms of Buddhism's supernatural powers." "What 9 realms?" Ming Fa couldn't help but ask. "I only know the 4 realms of benevolence, transcendence, Rugo, and Ming Jin." Zen, "Master Ming," you answered. "Martial Uncle never mentioned the other 5 realms, so I don't know either. Martial Uncle Xing Hai is only in the transcendence realm? If it's Rugo and Ming Jin, how powerful would they be?" Ming Fa asked enviously. "Oh, right, Senior Brother Abbot. Didn't I say it earlier? We are different from Buddhism's Dharma protectors, so we don't have to emphasize on cultivation realms." Zen, "Master Ming," you smiled. "We only need to exhaust our energy to serve Buddha, and when we have enough merit, we can attain Buddha fruit. That's the best outcome." Sigh, how can it be easy to attain Buddha fruit in Buddhism's 7 realms? However, the Sapphire Buddha fruit would probably require tens of thousands of merit points, not to mention the Supremacy, Heavenly King, Golden Gang, Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha. This penniless monk does not even know how much merit points would be required to obtain the Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha. According to what I know, Zen Master Mingyu hesitated and said softly, "Some Buddha fruits can't be attained in a lifetime, but in 2 or even 9 lifetimes. TSK. So difficult." Ming Fa took a deep breath and said angrily, "Previously, I was ignorant and thought that Buddha fruit was Buddhism's supernatural powers, but after hearing Senior Brother Abbott's words, there's a huge difference. Don't be discouraged, Junior Brother Ming Fa. Speaking of the supernatural powers of Buddhism, I've been practicing for more than 10 years, but I've only just stepped into the realm of benevolence. If I want to cultivate benevolence to perfection and enter the dust realm, I'm afraid it's impossible in this lifetime." Zen Master Mingyu encouraged Mingfa. "However, we have spread the Dharma in the Longevity Town and revitalized the Buddhist sect. With the accumulation of merit, it's not impossible for us to attain the indigo Buddha fruit in this lifetime." "Yes, I understand." Mingfa put his palms together and lowered his head. "Buddha is merciful. Buddhism is widely spread. Regardless of whether it is the cultivation of divine abilities or the accumulation of merit, it will pave the path to heaven under the feet of us bodhisattvas. This disciple is willing to make the indigo Buddha fruit my lifelong pursuit. I will give my everything to Buddha Tathagata." "Excellent." Zen Master Mingyu also pressed his palms together and said with a smile, "Junior brother, you are so ambitious. You will definitely be able to attain Buddhist enlightenment. I'm very gratified. Disciple thanks Senior Brother Abbot for clearing my doubts tonight." Ming Fa stood up and thanked him. "Disciple will take his leave now." "Yes, Junior Brother Mingfa. The immortal Buddhist ceremony in 10 days will be the first for our Shao Jin Temple. You must not make any mistakes. Start preparing from tomorrow onwards." Zen Master Mingyu stood up and instructed. "Yes, I understand. Senior Brother Abbot, please rest assured." Ming Fa agreed and slowly left the meditation room. Sigh, competing with the Jiangshao Temple is really an unfair victory. I wonder if Marshal Uncle Xing Hai will agree. Looking at Ming Fa's departing figure, Zen Master Mingyu sighed. "However, I don't think you will watch us get chased away by the Taoist priests of the Jiangshao Temple, right?" The 2 monks of the Shao Jin Temple were thinking about the Buddhist challenge in 10 days and preparing for the immortal Buddha ceremony that was held once every 10 years. On the west side of the Longevity Town, in the Longevity Academy, which was several times larger than the Shao Jin Temple, the sound of reading resounded from the academy, resonating in the night sky. Following the sound of reading, wisps of faint mist danced in the night sky. Also, traces of undetectable brilliance slowly scattered, enveloping the entire academy. Within the brilliance, in a corner of the academy, beside a lush bamboo forest, a disdainful voice reprimanded from within a small and exquisite library. "Junfeng, you are a little reckless. The immortal Buddhist ceremony can be lively, but it is only held in our Longevity Academy. Why did you drag the Shao Jin Temple into it? A small temple actually wants to stir up trouble in the Longevity Town. Why don't you take a look at the morals of these monks?" "Ha, Mr. Tyne, you worry too much." Following this voice, another voice sounded in the library. It was Zhu Junfeng, Dean Zhu of the Longevity Academy. He held the fist-sized lamp on the desk and looked at the white-haired but hale and hearty thin old man in front of him. He smiled and said, "I just happened to be returning from a walk outside the town with a group of scholars. When I heard about the bet between the Shao Jin Temple and the 3 Taoist priests of the Jiangshao Temple, I felt it was funny. That's why I spoke. I wanted to let them know that in the Longevity Town, only the Longevity Academy counts. Whether it is the Shao Jin Temple or the Jiangshao Temple, they are jackals of the same tribe. Yes, I just feel that competing with the Shao Jin Temple and celebrating the immortal Buddha ceremony is beneath the dignity of the Academy. It's not that I am dissatisfied with your arrangement." Mr. Tai nodded and said, "If we can use the immortal Buddhist ceremony to suppress the arrogance of the Shao Jin Temple, that would be great. That's exactly what I was thinking." Zhu Junfeng explained, in the past few decades, the Buddhism sect has been wantonly spreading Buddhism in the hidden immortal continent and the thousand-demon sacred realm. Although this doesn't violate the public opinion of the three continents, they have been brazenly establishing temples and sending some ignorant people into Buddhism. This has affected the rule of the Confucian cultivators in the hidden immortal continent. I used the immortal Buddhist ceremony to make the Shao Jin temple suffer. This is also a blow to them, and let them know when to stop. Don't be greedy. The Buddhism sect has big plans. We Confucian cultivators are already vigilant. Mr. Tyan frowned. The Buddhism sect has been building temples in the hidden immortal continent and spreading Buddhism to the point where it can't be suppressed. However, we Confucian cultivators have been building academies in the Western Paradise and teaching students. Progress is slow. The Buddhist people in the Western Paradise are very ignorant. It's hard to use benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faith to teach them well. Even if it's difficult, we have to face it. Otherwise, how can we go up and down to seek? Zhu Junfeng was also somewhat worried. However, from what I saw today, the Shaojin Temple has been unscrupulous in order to destroy the Jiangshao Temple. The Buddhism sect's intention of eliminating dissidents is really scary. It's far from our Confucian cultivators' breadth of mind. That's right. That abbot of the Shaojin Temple called Monk Mingyu obviously had the confidence to win. He was sure that after 10 days, there would be a Buddhist expert who defeated Yuanya. That's why he restrained himself and pushed the challenge 3 days later to 10 days later. He even used leaving the longevity town as bait to trick Taoist Shao of the Jiangshao Temple. His methods are really despicable. Chapter 3179. Poor Taoists. The Immortals and Buddha's ceremony is in 10 days. Although Longevity Academy won't make a move, they will disappear from Longevity Town under the pressure of the Buddhist sect. Mr. Tyan couldn't help but lament the fate of the Rivertide Temple. Who says Chongqing Academy won't do anything? Zhu Junfeng smiled. Since Mr. Jinli is here, don't go back empty-handed. No matter what Buddhist masters come from Shaojin Temple, let Mr. Mo do it. Let them see what the Confucian cultivators of Zhongxian continent are like. Oh, Mr. Mo Yin is coming? Mr. Tyan was surprised. I haven't seen Mr. Mo for years. Why'd he come to Chongqing Town? Mr. Tyan said proudly. Mr. Mo is young but mature. He is a famous scholar of Chongyan sect. Isn't it like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? Hearing Mr. Tyan's question, Zhu Junfeng's smile faded slightly, and he frowned slightly. He was also puzzled. Not to mention Mr. Tyan, even I am puzzled. The Longevity Town is just a small part of the country of Shi. Our Longevity Academy is just one of the hundreds of academies in the country of Shi. 15 years ago, because of the appearance of a fox demon in Mount Cheng, the sect sent Mr. Liu Tinghan to eliminate the demon. I passed by the Longevity Town and stayed for half a day. Since then, no other scholars have passed by here. Even if there are disciples of the sect who want to cross Liao River, they come from Jishun Town. Very few of them come to Chongqing Academy. Mr. Jinli's arrival is very sudden. Didn't the sect say anything else? Mr. Tyan didn't believe him. Oh, Mr. Jinli. Zhu Junfeng pretended to exaggerate. Sir is a senior elder of my Longevity Academy. Before this little one came to Longevity Town, Longevity Academy was managed by Sir alone. If the sect has information, how could this little one dare hide it from Sir? Ha ha! Mr. Tyan laughed heartily. He stroked his beard and shook his head. I'm just curious. If you don't want to tell me, I won't ask. Whoosh! At this moment, a green sword light flashed in the night sky outside the library. It cut through the open window and rushed in front of them. Who is it? Zhu Junfeng didn't have time to check what the sword light was. He turned his head abruptly and looked out of the window. His originally black and white eyes flashed with a faint clear light. Zhu Junfeng used the green-wood eyes of a Confucian cultivator to examine the situation around Longevity Academy. Mr. Tai, and waved his hand, and a ball of true qi flew out from his sleeve, instantly turning into a dozen or so strands to surround the sword light. Within the true chi, the sword light suddenly converged. It was a thumb-sized green flying sword. Mr. Tai and opened his mouth and infused his true chi into the flying sword. The surface of the flying sword immediately began to roll like water. Gradually, something similar to a bamboo joint emerged from the flying sword. Principal Zhu. The vigilance on Mr. Tai An's face faded. He smiled. This is a flying sword message from a sect. Try using Longevity Academy's sword comprehension technique. Zhu Junfeng used his greenwood eyes to observe for a moment. There was nothing strange within a few miles of the Chongsheng Academy. He knew that the sword light must be a message from the sect. He nodded and formed a sword sign with his hands. When a few streams of Zhen Qi rushed into the bamboo joint like flying swords, the bamboo joint slowly opened. A clear voice came from the bamboo joint. Zhu Yan, I am Mo Jianli from the sect. I am now on the Liao River, which is more than 15 miles south of the Chongsheng Academy. I have something to ask you. As Mo Jianli's voice faded, the bamboo joint slowly dissipated. Then, it turned back into a thumb-sized sword. Mr. Mo, Zhu Junfeng reached out and the sword landed in his hand. He carefully examined the sect insignia on the sword. He couldn't help but frown. He looked at Mr. Taiyan and asked curiously, How did he get here so quickly? Last time, the message said that he would come to Longevity Academy in about 6 days. Moreover, why did he go to Liao River instead of coming to Longevity Academy so late at night? Could it be that his main purpose of coming here today is Liao River? Since Mr. Mo is here, why don't we go and ask him? Why bother guessing? Mr. Tai, and said with a smile. When Zhu Junfeng heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Exactly. Tonight, the sky is clear and the stars are like lanterns. I really want to go to the Silver Han Dynasty with Mr. Taiyan. We'll play the stars and welcome the guests from afar. That's right. I want to go with you. Mr. Taiyan was in high spirits. He shook his hand, and a jade pendant flew into the air like an auspicious cloud. Then, he opened his mouth and breathed in a puff of true chi. The jade pendant flashed with a faint white light. Then it turned into an auspicious cloud several feet in size and floated in front of Mr. Taiyan. Mr. Taiyan raised his leg and stepped on it. The cloud rose into the air and rushed out of the library. Mr. Taiyan's robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. Mr. Taiyan's auspicious cloud pendant is indeed marvelous. It's not something an ordinary origin artifact can compare to. Zhu Junfeng's eyes flashed with a divine light as he praised. He extended his hand, and his index and middle fingers came together to form a sword seal. Rise! Following Zhu Junfeng's soft command, a wung sound of sword rang out. The treasured sword hanging on the wall of the library flew out of its scabbard, and like a silver dragon, it streaked across the air and rushed past Zhu Junfeng. Zhu Junfeng nimbly leaped onto it, and the treasured sword did not stop there either. It also rushed out of the library. In the sky above the library, other than the sound of students reading, Mr. Taiyan's voice could also be heard. The building is 100 feet high, and the stars can be plucked with one hand. I don't dare to speak loudly for fear of alarming the people in the sky. Zhu Junfeng heard this and laughed inwardly. Mr. Tai is in high spirits today. I'm afraid that Mr. Mo Jianli has inspired him. Mr. Tai has spent his entire life practicing the classics. Today, he has only reached the middle stage of transforming energy into chi. He is only a scholar. Mr. Mo, on the other hand, has practiced the noble spirit river. He is only in his 50s and has already reached the last stage of transforming energy into chi. He has become the youngest scholar in the Chongyan sect. Facing a child who once wanted to learn from him, no one would be able to remain calm. Sigh, where do saints come from in this world? The desire to win has never ceased. If Mr. Tai is like this, how can others be spared? Fortunately, although I'm a young scholar, I am still much younger than Mr. Amo, facing such a prodigy. How can I live with my dignity? Zhu Junfeng stood on his flying sword, looking like a sword immortal. He was even more graceful than Mr. Taiyan. Mr. Taiyan's high spirits had already attracted the attention of countless students. When Zhu Junfeng flew out, it caused a stir. Strong, quiet as a virgin, moving as a rabbit, using qi to control the sword, moving unhindered between heaven and earth. This is my life's pursuit. A few students with delicate features could not help but clench their fists and sigh. I'm willing to use my heart to strike the sky. I am willing to use my pure heart to cover the 9 provinces. I am willing to use the righteous energy of heaven and earth to destroy all demons and monsters in the world. Some students even sighed in the sky. However, more students were still whispering to each other. Since the headmaster has such a cultivation, if we work hard and train hard, we will definitely be able to win first place in the annual competition. Only then will we have the opportunity to enter the sect to cultivate. Only then will we be able to fulfill our ambitions. Our wish to sweep the world with our swords and cover the 9 provinces will come true. That's right. It's better to retreat and form a net than to admire the fish in the abyss. Of course, I won't lie to you. As they spoke, some students woke up from the chaos. They picked up their books and began to study word by word. Not long after, wisps of clear energy filled the entire academy, becoming denser and denser. Outside Longevity Town, night had already fallen. The fog of dusk only began to slowly recede at this time. The Liao River, which was dozens of li wide, was currently emitting hua-hua sounds of water. Under the bright moon, it flowed endlessly towards the east. The moonlight was like frost, sprinkling specks of water on the river. From time to time, fist-sized splashes would rise up and then turn into fireflies in the air. Occasionally, large whirlpools would appear in the rapid flow of the river. The dried branches and leaves floating on the river surface would all be sucked into the water. Although it was already late at night, under the moonlight, the Liao River seemed to be as bright as day. Not to mention the huge ships in the middle of the river from time to time, they could see the dozens of small boats fishing at the river's edge. It wasn't just the huge boats. Under the moonlight, it was the time for the fish to swim upstream. Tens of thousands of small fish were like notes jumping around in the waves. They jumped and attacked the water, going against the current, unwilling to go with the flow. It was a scene full of vitality, a scene of people wanting to fight against fate. Unfortunately, on the dozens of small boats, there were some middle-aged men who wanted to take advantage of the night to go upstream and catch more fish to feed their families and buy more clothes for their children. Looking at the nets cast time and time again on the small boats, there were also heavy shouts and joyous laughter. Although they were tired, their harvest was bountiful. On the other hand, those fishes who wanted to change their fate would immediately fall into the nets of others as soon as they jumped up from the river surface. Other than becoming the meal of others tomorrow, there was no other ending. What bravery, what change, what unyielding will! They all turned into the moon's shadow in the river. Without any reason, a gust of cold wind suddenly rushed out from the river. A few seemingly ordinary waves rose up with a whoosh, immediately capsizing several small boats nearby. The river's surface that didn't seem dangerous suddenly became a whirlpool. Nearly 10 people on the small boats fell into it and were immediately sucked into the whirlpool. There was almost no time to call for help. On the contrary, not far away, the fishermen who were celebrating their harvest inadvertently saw this and no longer cared about fishing. They shouted loudly, urging their family members who were trying their best to stabilize the small boats. They ignored the whirlpool on the river surface and rowed towards the small boats that were spinning rapidly in the whirlpool. There were even a few fishermen who didn't even think and jumped into the river, wanting to save the nearly 10 fishermen who had already disappeared. Chapter 3180. These fishermen might not be familiar with each other, but since they were still boating in the middle of the night, they knew that they were all people who worked hard. If they could lend a helping hand, no one would be stingy. How could their honest and upright hearts think more than that? Since those fishermen did not surface from the river, how much stronger could they be? But the strange thing was that these fishermen were much more agile than the upstream fish in the river. In a short moment, they had already neared the numerous large whirlpools. However, the moment the fishermen touched the whirlpools, they immediately sank into the water and did not show their heads again. It was as though they had never appeared in the first place. This time, the numerous fishermen who had rushed over from behind turned pale with fright. They hurriedly screamed and fled towards the shore with all their might. Unfortunately, it was already a little too late. The numerous large whirlpools were like huge mouths that could devour people. They were getting bigger and faster, moving towards these people. Help! The heart-wrenching cries for help could not travel far on the surging river surface. Not to mention the sound of splashing water, even the sound of thousands of fish falling into the water could drown out these cries. Just at this critical moment, a rumbling sound of flowing water suddenly appeared in the distant night sky. This flow of water was as continuous as the river water, but it also seemed to be more imposing than the sound of the river water. It was simply like a waterfall that washed down from the cliff. Following the sound of flowing water, another voice that was full of energy and even more powerful than the rolling waves sounded. Hold on for a moment. This MO will save you all. Looking at the source of the voice, a long river that was like the Milky Way descended from the nine heavens. On the long river, there was a scholar who stepped on a crimson cloud. He was dressed in a white scholarly robe and was flying over on a sword. Help! How could the numerous fishermen who had half of their bodies in the whirlpool care to look at the immortal's grace? They hurriedly shouted for help. Speaking of which, it was strange. When the scholar's voice sounded, the whirlpool on the river's surface immediately weakened. Although the fishermen's bodies were spinning uncontrollably in the whirlpool, they did not immediately fall into the river like before. In a short moment, the scholar had already landed on top of the fishermen's heads. The scholar's thick eyebrows and his face was full of tranquility. Although he was facing the life and death of several people, his thin lips were tightly shut and there was no sign of panic. Go, the scholar waved his hand, and a brocade silk handkerchief flew out. The sword wind became 10 feet long, and the silk handkerchief fell down and easily wrapped around a fisherman. Then, the silk handkerchief flew to other places and wrapped around a few more. As for the scholar himself, he controlled the flying sword and grabbed the air. 2 fishermen were pulled out of the river and were brought to the shore. This humble one thanks Mister for saving our lives. Several people landed on the shore. Their faces were already deathly pale, and they didn't think much about it as they lowered their heads and cowed out. Get up! Crow's feet appeared at the corner of the scholar's eyes. He did not look young. He waved his hand and said, "It's late now, and the Liao River is not peaceful. It's better to go back and rest early. Although fishing for money is important, your life is more important. Sir, please save old second son." One of the fishermen said anxiously, "He still has a 7-year-old blind old woman at home." The scholar looked at the Liao River, which was still without any waves, and bit his tightly shut lips slightly. Plop, plop. Several fishermen hurriedly kowtowed again. They might not know who old second son was, but they knew that without old second son, that 7-year-old blind old woman would not be able to live for long. Wait a moment. The scholar hesitated for a moment and flew into the air again. At this time, 3 slightly older old men flew over from the distant sky. They were all dressed like Confucian cultivators. However, these old men did not carry swords on their backs. Instead, they stepped on a faint green cloud. The 3 old men were very respectful when they saw the scholar. The scholar gave a few instructions, and the 3 old men chased after the uncontrollable boats on the river. They seemed to want to send these boats to the shore. The scholar waved his hand, and a sword light rushed into the night sky. The direction was the Longevity Town. Sword light flashed around his body, and then he rushed into the Liao River. A few moments later, when the 3 old men sent the boats to the shore, Mr. Tin and Zhu Junfeng arrived together on a cloud. When they saw the situation, the two of them were shocked. When they heard the fisherman say that it was dangerous, their expressions changed drastically. They looked at each other and then looked at each other. It was not that the Liao River was not dangerous. It was not that no fisherman had died on the Liao River. It was that, as the fisherman said, Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Tai, and had never heard of it before. My name is Zhu Yan, and my courtesy name is Zhu Junfeng. I am the Dean of the Longevity Town Academy. Greetings, martial uncles. Zhu Junfeng saw that the three old men were Confucian cultivators and hurriedly went forward to greet them. Mr. Tai, and did not dare to be negligent and bowed as well. Dean Zhu, junior brother Taiyan, we pay our respects to you. The three of them hurriedly returned the greeting and introduced themselves. They were all Confucian cultivators of the Chongyan sect. Their names were Qiu Jian, Li Mo Ming, and Ji Dong. However, they did not tell Zhu Junfeng their courtesy names. After the five of them greeted each other, Zhu Junfeng did not ask too many questions because there were still fishermen from the Longevity Town. He looked at the three of them and said, Mr. Taiyan will accompany the three martial uncles here. I will go and take a look. Dean Zhu, Qiu Jian hurriedly called out, the river is dangerous. Mr. Mo Ming won't even let us go near it. You should, it's fine. Zhu Junfeng smiled. I have been in the Longevity Town for a long time. If I haven't been to the Liao River 100 times, I have at least been here dozens of times. I have done many things like rowing at night and drinking. Dean Zhu, Li Mo Ming said unhappily, I know that you are in charge of this place. However, since Mr. Mo Ming is here, we naturally have to listen to his orders. Mr. Mo Ming said not to go there. That place is definitely dangerous. Furthermore, I have come here today precisely for this matter. If you think that a little scholar like you can handle it, then I will wait for Mr. Mo Ming to return and immediately turn back. Yes, I know my mistake. Zhu Junfeng's heart trembled as he hurriedly bowed. It's good that you know. Li Mo Ming nodded and did not say anything else. He raised his head and looked at the Liao River. The wide Liao River was the same as before. There was no danger at all. There were very few giant boats in the middle of the river, but one would occasionally sail by. The lights on the giant boat flickered with the stars in the sky, and the fragments of moonlight on the river's surface seemed to resonate with each other. It made one wonder if this was the falling stars in the sky. Whoosh! A long river flowed against the current and rushed up to the sky. The brilliance of the river instantly covered all the stars in moonlight. Chapter 3181. Mr. Mo is back. Ji Dong frowned and exclaimed, but Mr. Mo, yes, Mr. Mo stepped on the river and flew across the sky, landing right in front of them. Unfortunately, his hands were empty, not even the corpses of the fishermen. My apologies. Mo gently landed, ignoring Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Taiyan. Instead, he walked up to the fishermen and bowed. I have failed you. Not only did I not find Sun Lauer and the others, I did not even see their corpses. Mr. Mo, you didn't go with the river? The fisherman asked in disbelief. Of course I did. Mo gently was not embarrassed by the fisherman's pointing fingers. He explained calmly, I have checked the area within a few miles, including the bottom of the river. Hiss! The fishermen were shocked, their bodies trembling. Could it be? I don't know what it is, and I didn't see it, so I don't dare to say anything. But for now, don't come out to fish at night. Mo gently said in a gentle voice, Of course, we will try to find the reason around the Longevity Town, but there might be some accidents. You should wait until the truth is out. But we all fish for a living. Even if we don't come out at night, we have to come to Liao River during the day. One of the fishermen said boldly. Sigh. Mo gently sighed, looked at Zhu Junfeng, and said to the fisherman, The Longevity Academy of the Chongyun sect will do its best to protect you. However, you all still need to be careful. Mo gently then took out a silver coin from his pocket and handed it to the fisherman. He said, This is for Sun Lauer's mother. Please give it to that poor old woman for me. Thank you, Mr. Mo. The fisherman took it gratefully. I thank you on behalf of Sun Lauer. I will definitely bring this to Sun Lauer. Please don't worry. You can go now. Mo gently waved his hand. The fishing boat has been found. Go home quickly. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mo. The fishermen were overjoyed but still scared. They packed up their fishing gear and their harvest and hurried back. Greetings, Mr. Lee. Zhu Junfeng could still call the few scholars martial uncle, but Mo Jianli, who was a scholar, could only call him grandmaster. However, among Confucian cultivators, teacher was an honorific, regardless of seniority. Most Confucian cultivators liked to hear this honorific, so Zhu Junfeng naturally addressed him as teacher. Yes, Principal Zhu, there was no trace of smile on Mo Jianli's face. He seemed to be feeling guilty about what had happened just now. He cupped his hands and bowed. This old man will be troubling the principal for a period of time from now on. I don't dare. Sir, please call me Junfeng. Zhu Junfeng hurriedly said respectfully, Sir, you are my senior. Regardless of knowledge or cultivation, you're my teacher. The dean is just a common name. Sir, please don't humiliate me. All right. Mo gently nodded, then bowed to Mr. Tyan and said, Mr. Tyan, I haven't seen you for many years. Today, I see that you are still as strong as before. Mr. Mo, Mr. Tai, and was not convinced before he came here. However, when he saw Mo Jianli was neither arrogant nor humble. Mo Jianli was so amiable even in front of a few lowly fishermen. He was convinced. He hurriedly bowed and said, In the early years, I just explained a few things to you. I don't dare to call myself your teacher. Sir, you are wrong. A teacher for a day is a father for life. Mo Jianli's tone was still a bit indifferent. Although you have never been my teacher, a few words of advice are enough. It is the tradition of Confucian cultivators to respect their teachers. If I don't acknowledge you as my teacher just because my cultivation is higher than yours, how can I carry forward the inheritance of Confucian cultivators? Haha, Mr. Mo. Mr. Tyan laughed. You can call me Mr. Mo. You don't have to call yourself my student. Otherwise, as a scholar, if I were to hear a scholar call me teacher, I would also feel uncomfortable in my heart. All right, I got it. Mo Jianli didn't hesitate. He nodded and said to Zhu Junfeng, Junfeng, did you hear what the fisherman said just now? Do you know what's going on? I've heard about it. Zhu Junfeng hurriedly replied, I've never seen such a situation in all my years in Longevity Town. However, legend has it that thousands of years ago, Liao River was inhabited by the Water Tribe. These Water Tribe are cruel and often eat mortals alive. Every year, the Longevity Town would have to hand over virgin boys and girls on time. Otherwise, they would flood the town. That's right. Mr. Tyan nodded. I've heard about it too. Because of the Water Tribe, the Longevity Town was plunged into misery and suffering. The people had no way of making a living. Almost every family was wailing in grief. 7 out of 10 people left for other places. Later on, an immortal passed by the Liao River and saw a group of fishermen carrying a crying boy and girl to throw into the Liao River as a sacrifice to the Water Tribe. Only then did he make a move to subdue the demon. He fought with the Water Tribe for 3 days and 3 nights, fighting until the sky turned dark and the earth turned dark. In the end, the Water Tribe was killed. Blood flowed all over the river. The immortal floated away. Later on, in order to commemorate this immortal, the Longevity Town built a Taoist temple for him on Jiangshao Ridge. It's called Jiangshao Temple. Zhu Junfeng continued. They even called the statue the god of the river. Junfeng, thousands of years ago, was there a Longevity Academy in Longevity Town? Mo Jianli asked abruptly. Of course there wasn't. Zhu Junfeng said curiously. My Chongyun sect only built the Longevity Academy 1,200 years ago. At that time, I'm afraid my Chongyun sect was still a small sect, right? Mo Jianli nodded. However, even if there wasn't a Longevity Academy in the Chongyun sect, there was still a Jingzhu Academy in the Bamboo sect. So why didn't the Longevity Town spread the story of the Jingzhou Academy, but instead built a Taoist temple in Jiangshao Ridge? This, I don't know. Zhu Junfeng was a little embarrassed. The Academy's records about this are not very detailed. I don't mean to blame you. Mo Jinli explained. I received a secret order from the sect and found this information in the sect's records about the Longevity Town. I didn't know about this before. Mister, please enlighten me. Zhu Junfeng clasped his hands and said, There's no other reason. It's because the students of the Jingzhou Academy from the Bamboo sect all died in the battle with the Water Tribe. None of them survived, and that so-called immortal was just passing by when the Water Tribe died and took advantage of the situation. It's not like the stories said, where they saw some virgin boys and girls. Mo Jinli sneered. That so-called immortal was not a Taoist cultivator, but a Buddhist disciple. But that disciple was not a monk who shaved his head, so he was mistaken for a Taoist cultivator, a Buddhist disciple who didn't shave his head. Zhu Junfeng was surprised. There's such a person? Which one is it? The sect's records didn't mention it in detail, so I don't know. Don't ask too much. I guess the sect didn't want to leave behind a thick mark of the Buddhism sect in the Longevity Town. Mo Jinli said lightly. And in the following thousands of years, the number of Buddhist cultivators gradually decreased. On the contrary, there were more and more monks who shaved their heads in the Zhongxian continent. Oh, Zhu Junfeng was deep in thought. Mr. Tien frowned and said, Mr. Mo, so what happened today? I don't know either. Maybe it's a little strange. Mo Jinli sighed. He turned to look at the moon, which had already set, and the Liao River, which was covered in mist again, and said, Our Chongyan Martial School has received some news. It seems that some water-kind creatures have come to the Liao River. As for whether they are the descendants of those water-kind creatures thousands of years ago, and whether they want to harm the Longevity Town, the Martial School has no right to know. But for the safety of the Longevity Academy, I have been ordered to come here. Hiss! Hearing this, Zhu Junfeng gasped and said hurriedly, The Water Tribe are naturally demons. They have a long lifespan, which is far from the human race. This Liao River is far away from the East Sea, and there hasn't been any Water Tribe members wreaking havoc for hundreds of years. If there really are Water Tribe members coming, they must be the descendants of the Water Tribe. It's too early to make a judgment now. Mo Jinli waved his hand. It's better to wait and see. All right, Mr. Tai, and looked at Zhu Junfeng and said in a low voice, The Shao Jin Temple seems to have sent experts here too. Could it be because of this? Maybe. Mo Jinli's eyes flashed with a trace of disgust. The Buddhism sect is everywhere in the Zhongxian continent. Their dharma is the best at bewitching people. What happened in the Longevity Town thousands of years ago may be hidden from ordinary people, but may not be hidden from the Buddhism sect's experts. And now they have many spies in the Zhongxian continent. The sources of information are no less than us Confucian cultivators. If the Chongyan sect can get the information, they can get it even more. Besides, the Shao Jin Temple has grown from a small temple of 2 or 3 monks to a temple of 30 or 40 people. Its future is limitless. It can't be ignored by the Yunlin Temple. I just don't know which monk from the Yunlin Temple came here today. And Zhu Junfeng suddenly remembered something and said hurriedly, This afternoon, a demon appeared on the streets of the Longevity Town. Oh? What demon? What's its cultivation level? Mo Jinli's eyes lit up as he asked. Zhu Junfeng hurriedly told him what he heard, and then said, A few students from the academy who returned early have seen it. Mister, why don't you come back with me and ask for more details? That's right. Mo Jinli clapped his hands and said, Since there are traces of that demon, I'm more confident now. Jidong, you stay here. If you encounter anything strange, just go back to the academy and report it to me. Yes, Mr. Mo. Jidong answered and walked out from the crowd. Chapter 3182. The others followed Junfeng back to Longevity Academy. Jidong flew to a hillside and stood with his hands behind his back, quietly looking at the rapidly flowing Liao River. Liao River's water was like thousands of years ago. Although the waves were small, they were not completely dead. Under the small waves, there was an incomparably surging undercurrent. This undercurrent was not something that could be seen clearly by the greenwood eyes and divine sense. Longevity Town's turbulence did not affect Xiao Hua at the tidal river temple. Xiao Hua sat on the praying mat and calmly refined the earth crystal Yao milk. In front of this mountain of crystal milk, Xiao Hua's refinement was tantamount to a foolish old man moving a mountain. Although Xiao Hua still had some Mo Zhao's corpse in his space, which also had a corrosive effect on this crystal milk, the stingy Xiao Hua was not willing to part with it. This was all heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Wasting even a little bit was disrespectful to heaven and earth. He could only move it bit by bit like an ant moving house, turning it into a part of his cultivation. Now that I've arrived at hidden immortal continent, perhaps I can find my origin. Xiao Hua secretly thought as he cultivated. Since I have the 18th level of Qi refining technique, it is obviously different from Dawn Rain Continent. The Taoist technique of hidden immortal continent is also different from Dawn Rain Continent. The classification of the lower levels is also very different, very similar to my cultivation. Maybe I didn't come from the 10,000 demon realm, but from one of the 3 continents. The heavens sent this Xiao back to fulfill this Zhao's dream of returning home. Of course, if I can't find my home here, then I will do my best to improve my cultivation and return to Dawn Rain Continent. Presumably, those 2 old farts from Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension Sect will know something. Xiao Hua thought of this, and his eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. Other than Xiao Hua, there was also Xiao Jian who was restless. Tonight, Xiao Jian was like sitting on a wave. He was suddenly thrown into the air and then fell down again. Even now, he was not at peace. It was because he really could not guess Xiao Hua's cultivation. On one hand, he doubted Xiao Hua's origin. On the other hand, he believed in Xiao Hua's innocence. On one hand, he overestimated Xiao Hua's cultivation. On the other hand, he doubted his own overestimation. After all, Xiao Jian did not detect Xiao Hua's divine sense, nor did he detect Xiao Hua's true qi. He did not believe that Xiao Hua's block meridians could cultivate true qi. But it was clear that since Xiao Hua was able to produce miraculous pills and possess divine sense, his background was in no way simple. But what made Xiao Jian about to go crazy was that this Taoist cultivator with an extraordinary background actually didn't even know about the essence energy of the 3 continents. Even with his wisdom, he couldn't figure out if Xiao Hua was testing him or if he really didn't understand. Rather than calling Xiao Hua fellow Taoist, Xiao Jian might as well call him Senior Xiao Hua. However, rather than calling Xiao Hua by his real name, he still wanted to call him fellow Taoist Xiao Hua. In the face of the challenge from the small golden temple, just Yuanya alone was no longer of any use. The only person he could rely on now was Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was the only person Xiao Jian and Yuanya could rely on to not be expelled from the Longevity Town. Compared to Xiao Jian's distracting thoughts, Yuanya was much simpler. This guy hugged the branch of the banyan tree and slept soundly. His saliva, along with the smile on his face, almost got stuck on a banyan fruit. If the townspeople who flocked to the Rivertide Temple to pick the immortal fruits found out that the thing they regarded as miraculous pills was actually stained with Yuanya's saliva, would they beat Yuanya to the ground and trample on him 10,000 times? Would they not care about the happiness Yuanya brought last night because of his dream of becoming a Xiao Hua's disciple? The night passed quickly. It was not delayed by the deaths of several fishermen in Liaojiang. When the first rays of dawn appeared, the sunlight passed through the banyan tree and fell into the temple. Xiao Jian's heart was even more anxious. If not for the fact that he couldn't use his divine sense often, he would have already released it. He really wanted to know if the Rivertide Temple's liveliness last night was able to attract the townspeople's attention. Would it be able to make them slightly shift their gaze and piety from the small golden temple to the river tide temple? At the very least, there was no need for him, the representative of the river tide temple, the successor of the Taoist school, to show his face in public and set up a stall to sell divination, right? Listening to the chirping of the birds on the banyan tree, Xiao Jian's eyes from time to time drifted towards the small door of the temple, ready to be drowned by the tide of people at any time. Unfortunately, after looking for the time it took to eat a meal, the small door did not even make a creaking sound. First, there was still the pleasant chirping of the birds, which made Xiao Jian feel that it was too noisy. That's not right. Suddenly, Xiao Jian woke up. Since when did his Rivertide temple have birds? Those birds were a delicacy in the eyes of Yuanya, who grew up in the forest, especially when Yuanya did not have enough copper coins to buy meat buns. Therefore, after Xiao Jian and Yuanya arrived at the Rivertide temple, there were no more birds chirping in the morning. How come there are birds today? Yeah. Has he already stuffed his teeth with meat buns? Xiao Jian immediately had a bad feeling. When he hurriedly rushed to the west wing, Xiao Hua, who was meditating, there was already nowhere to be found. Damn it, the two of them couldn't have eloped, right? Xiao Jian immediately became anxious. Although he was paranoid for an entire night and did not eliminate his doubts about Xiao Hua, but thinking about it, if Xiao Hua was not by his side, he would have no one to rely on. It would be just like when he was alone and did not have Yuanya. Xiao Jian rushed out of the temple even more hurriedly than before. When he saw Xiao Hua, who was on the empty ground next to the Rivertide temple, using the Big Dipper magical fist, and Yuanya, who was obediently lying behind a small tree in the distance like a leopard peeping, his heart immediately calmed down. Hee, this sunlight is really beautiful. Xiao Jian looked at the distant morning sun and took a deep breath. He raised his hands and stretched his waist, pretending to dance a few times with his fists and legs. He opened his mouth and scolded, "What a good-for-nothing! How can a small tree support your fat body? Since you want to secretly learn, then do it openly and brazenly. Why you have to be so secretive?" Xiao Jian's words immediately startled the chirping birds on the banyan tree. Naturally, Yuanya also flew up with the birds. This guy's face carried a trace of shame. His hands and feet nimbly climbed up the small tree. His whole body borrowed the elasticity of the branches to rush up the banyan tree and then hit his whole body between the branches. Xiao Hua naturally had already seen through the appearance of this pair of master and disciple. He secretly laughed in his heart and did not pay attention to them. The current him is already 200 years old. He can really call himself an old man. Xiao Jian and Yuanya are just two little children in front of him. However, Xiao Hua's face is so tender that he also likes others to call him young man. The Big Dipper magical fist was used one move after another. The slow and steady flow melted the earth crystal Yao milk bit by bit. Xiao Hua closed his eyes and enjoyed this relaxed and tranquil atmosphere. He did not seem to care about Yuanya's secretly learning. If the Big Dipper magical fist could be learned so easily, would it still be a bone-tempering secret technique? Even though Yuanya, who had escaped, still revealed half of his eyes on the banyan tree. His eyes were burning with passion, but Xiao Hua did not expose him. Xiao Jian also did not think that Yuanya, who was always ignorant of the ways of the world, would be so shy today. He actually escaped back to the Taoist temple. He strolled in front of the Taoist temple for a while. From time to time, he would look down at the Jiangshao Ridge and see that there were already some people on the main road. Unfortunately, these people were only limited to the main road. Not even half of them flowed towards the Jiangshao temple. Xiao Jian sighed. He knew that his dream was shattered. He loudly berated, "You quickly get down for this old man. Follow this old man to the town." Similarly, the yes master that Xiao Jian was accustomed to did not appear. Instead, it was Yuanya who asked in puzzlement, "Master, didn't we have so many copper coins yesterday? Why we need to go to the town again?" "Oh, that's right. Master wants to eat steam buns, right? I will look for a while and then go buy some for Master." "Idiot!" Xiao Jian had already entered the Taoist temple. He angrily scolded. What do you know? Do you know how to sit and eat? Although there are a lot of copper coins, it is not enough for us to eat for a year and a half. This old man should take advantage of these days when the Taoist temple's feng shui is flourishing to earn a few more copper coins. While speaking, Xiao Jian hurriedly entered the east room. There was a series of crackling sounds in the room. It was as if someone was looking for something. Last night, there were really a lot of people who came to the Taoist temple. There were really a lot of people who rushed into Xiao Jian's room to search for the so-called elixirs. Even the box that Xiao Jian locked with a copper lock was pried open. Let's go, what could Xiao Jian say? Inside the achievement box was a pile of copper coins. It looked much cuter than the copper lock. However, in the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Jian had already tidied up. He was still wearing the same Taoist robe, the cloth bag, and the bamboo pole. Io, Xiao Hua's Taoist robe. Lowering his head to look at his own Taoist robe, Xiao Jian suddenly remembered that the clothes that Xiao Hua was wearing today were not the same ones that he was wearing yesterday. Moreover, it looked a bit strange. It was different from what he was wearing. What was special was that the material of the Taoist robe seemed to be of a much higher quality than his. Where did this guy get these things? Look at how he has nothing on him. Damn it, did he take the copper coins from the main hall yesterday? Xiao Jian suddenly woke up and hurriedly went to the main hall to check. However, the achievement box was still locked. He picked it up and waited a few times. The wait was the same. Only then did he fiercely look at Xiao Hua's direction and extinguish the thought of interrogating Xiao Hua. Master, wait a moment. Let me take a look again. Xiao Jian walked out of the main hall. Yuan Ye's careful voice came from the banyan tree. You idiot! Xiao Jian berated. Quickly come down. How many times have you seen it? You still can't learn it? It's not that I don't want to teach you. It's that you are not cut out for it. You are just a petty person. Yes, Master, Xiao Jian's familiar reply finally appeared. However, there was a trace of depression in his tone. It seems that I am indeed not fit to cultivate with Master. It is only the 108 fist and leg style. No matter how I look at it, I can understand it. However, after I hit the front, I forgot the back. Chapter 3183. Let's go. Follow this old man. Xiao Jian raised his head and shouted unhappily. However, before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by the sound of beating drums. The sound of the drums wasn't very loud, but it was clear in Xiao Jian's ears. In particular, the sound of the drums was getting louder and louder, and there were also some messy noises. Ha ha ha! Someone is coming. Xiao Jian laughed and threw the bamboo pole away. He had just scolded Yuanya for being petty, and now he rushed to the front of the Taoist temple. However, Xiao Jian didn't jump out directly, but instead he peeked out half of his head and looked outside the Taoist temple, just like how Yuanya hid on the banyan tree and peeked at Xiao Hua's practice. Don't look. Xiao Hua's faint voice sounded from above Xiao Jian's head. You can't see anything if you hide in the Taoist temple. They have just reached the foot of the mountain. Xiao Jian, awkwardly straightened his back and looked at Xiao Hua, who was standing beside the door of the Taoist temple. He smiled embarrassedly. I want to see if the group of people from the General Ridge came again. They turned our Jiangqiao temple upside down. And it shouldn't be the group of people from the General Ridge. Xiao Hua glanced at the distance and said, They seem to be fishermen. Some of them are holding fishing nets, and some of them are holding oars. In addition, some of them are wearing white mourning clothes. They should be here to worship the Taoist temple. Worship the Taoist temple? Xiao Jian seemed to be a little disappointed. He coughed twice and was about to walk out of the Taoist temple. At this moment, Yuan Ye's cheers sounded. Master, there are pig heads. Big fat pig heads, cow heads, and sheep heads. Slurp, at this point, Yuan Ye couldn't help but drool. When Xiao Jian heard this, he naturally swallowed his saliva. He walked to the front of the Taoist temple and looked down along the mountain path. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua and Yuan Ye had said, there were dozens of people at the foot of the mountain path. In front of these people were three bare-chested strong men. Above the heads of these three men were a red lacquered tray. On each tray was the head of a cow, a pig, and a sheep. Behind the three heads were two children, one male and one female. Each of them was holding a fist-sized incense burner. At this moment, there were 3 incense sticks in each burner. As soon as the incense sticks were lit, the incense sticks slowly floated up and were blown away by the mountain breeze. Behind this group of boys and girls, there were another dozen or so people. Among these dozen or so people, 2 of them were carrying a red drum that was several feet in size. There was also a burly man who was several feet tall, holding a drumstick that was even larger than his fist. He was beating the drum with all his might. Large beads of sweat dripped down the man's forehead, and his veins throbbed as he beat the drum. Next to the 3 people beating the drums, there were 4 people holding gongs in their hands. Clang! Clang! As for the people dancing along with the gongs and drums, there were 2 men dressed as lions. In front of the 2 male lions, there was actually a thin young man holding a colorful ball in his hand. It was like a lion dance. As they pounced on the young man's colorful ball, the young man nimbly jumped in front of the male lions, dodging and leading the 2 male lions up the mountain path step by step. Behind these people, there were dozens of fishermen wearing tattered clothes. Each of them held a fishing net and oar in their hands, respectfully following behind the lion dance. Their faces were solemn and pious. As for the people in mourning clothes that Xiao Hua had mentioned, they were walking at the very end. There were about 10 people, women, children, and the old and weak. What is going on? Xiao Jian was shocked. This was something that he had never encountered in the years he had been at Jianshao Temple. What are they going to sacrifice? Could it be that they're going to make a water and Landao temple? Xiao Jian said to himself. Then, should they go to Xiao Jin Temple? Master, on the branch of the banyan tree outside the temple, Yuan Ye's figure strangely appeared. He shouted, I'm afraid that your reputation has already spread out last night. These people are here to worship you. Not bad, not bad. Xiao Jian suddenly understood. He hurriedly lowered his head to look at his own Dao robe and immediately felt extremely dissatisfied. He turned his head and crashed into the temple. It was unknown whether he went to lock the door or to change his Dao robe. In short, when the sound of gongs and drums arrived in front of the temple, Xiao Hua quietly watched from the side. Xiao Jian was wearing a new Dao robe and brought Yuanya out of the temple. At this time, Yuanya was also wearing new clothes. However, looking at Yuanya's twisted head and back appearance, he was definitely not used to it. However, this did not affect Xiao Jian's face, full of smiles and extremely amiable. Xiao Jian walked in front of the 3 big men holding the tray and bowed. I, Xiao Jian, am the temple master of Jianshao Temple. May I know the reason for your visit? Who knew that the respect and answer that Xiao Jian expected did not appear? The 3 men did not pay any attention to Xiao Jian at all. In the order of sheep, pig, and cow, they walked past where Xiao Jian bowed and entered the Taoist temple. Even the boy and girl behind them, with the incense burner in their hands, did not pay any attention to Xiao Jian. Cough, cough. Xiao Jian was extremely embarrassed. He coughed twice and was about to speak when Yuanya suddenly said in a low voice, Master, I forgot. Previously, when I was in Longevity Town, I seem to have heard someone say that this Jiangchao temple used to worship the sea god. Did they come to worship the sea god? Are they not looking for master? Damn it. Xiao Jian lifted his leg and turned around to kick Yuanya's knee. Why didn't you say so earlier? Disciple, just remembered. Yuanya felt very wronged, but he still nimbly dodged Xiao Jian's kick and explained in a low voice. Go in first. No matter who they are worshipping, you are the temple master now. Xiao Hua said in a bad mood. Yes, what fellow Xiao said is right. Xiao Jian felt that it was reasonable and felt less embarrassed. He did not have time to argue with Yuanya and took the opportunity to enter the temple while the lion dance was showing off in front of the temple. Sure enough, after Xiao Jian and the others entered, The dozens of people behind a line dance also rushed in. In an instant, the small temple was completely surrounded. Xiao Jian had just walked to the center of the temple when he saw the three big men enter the main hall. One of the three big men waved his hand, and the candles on the altar were swept to the ground by him. Seeing this, Xiao Jian could not help but feel anxious. How were they here to worship? They were clearly here to cause trouble. The Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect were not on good terms. The monks of the small gold temple also did not come to the Jiangshao temple to cause trouble. Xiao Jian shouted loudly. However, without waiting for him to shout, the three big men simultaneously turned around and angrily said, "Where did this wild Taoist come from? This Jiangshao temple is the place where my longevity town worships the sea god. Not only did you secretly occupy the temple, but you are also here to act mysterious? If you dare to say another word, see if I don't chase you out of the Jiangshao mountain range." When Xiao Jian heard this, he immediately shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. He was afraid that he would be chased out of Longevity Town by these fishermen before he could fight with the monks of the small gold temple. "Lord Sea God!" Mournful shouts came from behind Xiao Jian. Dozens of old and weak women and children wearing mourning clothes entered the Jiangshao temple and cried as they rushed towards the main hall. Xiao Jian tactfully dodged to the side. He was even more agile than Yuanya. Following the cries and shouts of these fishermen, the three burly men placed the three offerings on the altar. The two virgin boys and virgin girls also presented the incense burner respectfully and stepped back to the altar with their heads bowed and eyes lowered. In the main hall, the three offerings shone brightly. The two young boys and girls were beautiful and charming. Smoke curled around the incense burner. Although the statue was still tattered, with the cries and sincere worship of the fishermen in the main hall, it was unknown how many times more powerful it was compared to the worship of Xiao Jian and Yuanya. Xiao Hua stood not far behind Yuanya. His eyes flickered as he saw everything clearly. After less than an hour, the fishermen wearing mourning clothes paid their respects. The other fishermen also paid their respects. Xiao Hua already understood. He knew that a disaster had occurred in the Liao River last night. 10 fishermen lost their lives in the river. These fishermen came to pay their respects to this statue for their own safety and future livelihood. They did not know how many years they had not paid their respects to this statue. At the end of the worship, a few craftsmen first went forward to pay their respects. Then, they took out a strange ruler and thread to carefully measure the statue. Then, they took out a brush and ink to carefully mark some numbers on an image. Xiaohua also clearly saw that the image was of a statue. This statue was of a male body. The 2 strands of mustache above his lips were especially obvious. Other than the mustache, the statue was full and round like a heavenly palace. His ears were even drooping over his shoulders. In his eyes, other than some compassion, there was even more ferocity. Oh, is this the so-called sea god? It seems like it is only SOSO. Compared to Taoist Master Xiao, it is still far inferior. Xiao Hua faintly smiled and looked elsewhere. Unlike Xiao Hua's indifference, Xiao Jian was laughing nonstop. He promised the villagers of General Ridge that he would reconstruct the statue's golden body. However, in reality, he did not even know what the statue originally looked like. Moreover, he still had to find the craftsmen and discuss with them how to repair it. In particular, although he had a lot of copper coins last night, it was far from enough to repair the statue. Now that the fishermen were paying their respects to the sea god, wouldn't it save him a lot of trouble by reconstructing the statue's golden body? How could Xiao Jian not be happy? When the villagers of General Ridge ask me, this old man will say that I repaired it myself. Xiao Jian had already made up his mind. Moreover, he believed that the villagers of General Ridge would definitely not ask too much. The craftsmen wrote down some numbers and hurriedly left the Taoist temple. It was obvious that they wanted to reconstruct the statue's golden body in the shortest time possible. The fishermen in the Taoist temple excitedly paid their respects a few more times. Seeing that the ritual that had nothing to do with Taoist Master Xiao Jian was about to end, more than 10 people came in from outside the Taoist temple. These people looked different from the fishermen. However, when they looked at the fishermen in the Taoist temple, there was no surprise in their eyes. Naturally, the fishermen did not pay any attention to them. They even nodded to each other in a friendly manner. However, when these people kowtowed, their first sentence successfully caused the emotions of the two groups of people to explode. Chapter 3184. Thank you, Taoist Xiao. One of the vigorous old men knelt down in the main hall and said in a low voice, "Last night, I received Taoist Xiao's miraculous elixir and took it overnight. The chronic illness that I've had for decades disappeared at once." Before the old man finished speaking, the fishermen who were packing up and preparing to leave the Taoist temple could not take it anymore. A strong man hurriedly shouted, "Old man, what are you talking about? This Jiangshao temple worships the sea god of our fishermen. There's no Taoist Xiao. If you want to worship, you can go to Taoist Xiao's Taoist temple. Don't worship blindly here. If you annoy the sea god, not only will we fishermen have nowhere to make a living, but the entire longevity town will also be eaten up by the monsters in the water. Little guy, what do you know?" The old man glared at the fisherman with disdain and said, "This Jiangshao temple worships Taoist Xiao. He just showed up yesterday. Not only did he save my family of 3 in General Ridge, but he also gave me elixirs. Look, my chronic illness, and these people's illnesses are all thanks to Taoist Master Xiao's blessing." Bullshit. Before the old man finished speaking, another old man who looked older than him rushed out from the fisherman. He held a small oar in his hand and scolded, "Rebellious thing! This is the place where my fishermen worship the sea god. It has been here for thousands of years. When did it become the place where you worship Taoist Xiao? Seeing that you are all villagers of my longevity town, get out of here quickly. If you dare to say filthy words again and slander the sea god, I'll beat you to death with a stick." "How dare you?" The few villagers next to him could not take it anymore. "This is obviously Taoist Xiao's Taoist temple. Last night, we just worshipped Taoist Xiao. Furthermore, Taoist Xiao has already shown up. Beat them to death." The old fisherman was so angry that he was trembling. The oar in his hand was also trembling. When these fishermen heard that nearly 10 fishermen had died in the river last night, they already felt that something was wrong. They discussed overnight that they would rush to the sea god of the Jiangshao temple to repair his golden body. Moreover, this worship ceremony was decided after a night of discussion. Who would have thought that after they had been busy for the whole morning and were just about to end, the villagers of General Ridge would appear and call the sea god Xiao Taoist Xiao? This was obviously blasphemy to the sea god. The painstaking efforts of nearly 100 fishermen were all in vain. How could this old man not be angry? He seemed to see the Liao River filled with fishermen's corpses. Since the old man had such thoughts, the other fishermen naturally had the same thoughts. Over 10 fishermen who were closer to the main hall waved their oars and pounced forward. In an instant, they had knocked over the villagers from General Ridge to the ground. "Quickly go and save them." Xiao Hua saw that the situation was bad and knew that the situation today was worse than yesterday. He hurriedly ordered Yuanya. Yuanya was stunned for a moment. Then he let out a loud roar. His figure pounced out like a leopard, rushing to the side of the main hall. He raised his hands and stomped his feet. In just a short moment, he had knocked the dozen or so fishermen to the ground. Where did this bastard come from? The old fisherman's mouth was so foul that it hit Yuanya's soft spot. Roar! Yuanya kicked a fisherman into the hall, raised his head, and roared. Then he suddenly turned around and stared at the old fisherman with his bloodshot eyes. Plop! Without waiting for Yuanya to make a move, his gaze that was as sharp as a sword was enough to scare the old man to the point that he wet his pants and sat on the ground. "Great-grandfather!" A few strong men in the distance shouted and prepared to pounce over. Yuanya's strength and strength had already gathered and was about to erupt. It seemed that he would be able to rush to the front of the old fisherman without the need for those strong men to pounce over. He only needed to lightly slap, and he would definitely be able to kill this old fisherman who flaunted his seniority and spoke vicious words. As long as it was a farmer in the countryside, no matter if it was a fisherman fishing on the Liao River or a farmer digging for food in the fields, all they cared about was the life of their family members. All they thought about was their ordinary life. When they were powerless to control their lives, they would always place their hopes on God, on an existence that was beyond their ability. Moreover, in their simple minds, they might not risk their lives for the sake of living because there was always a glimmer of hope in life, making them reluctant to risk their lives. However, for the sake of the God in their hearts, for the sake of their last hope, they would definitely risk their lives regardless of everything. Perhaps the farmers were simple, but if they were stubborn, then even if they were to bang their head against the wall, they would not easily turn back. Therefore, even if Yuanya suddenly showed his power and knocked several fishermen to the ground in an instant, and even looked at the old fisherman like a wild beast, if something went wrong, he would immediately kill him. However, those fishermen who had been fighting against the fierce wind and fierce waves for many years instead became ferocious. That old man clenched his teeth, as if he did not care about Yuanya's snake-like gaze staring at him. He waved his hand and said, "Hit." Xiaohua was slightly angry in his heart. He could clearly see the farmer's pity, but the farmer's selfishness was also something he did not expect. Even if it was just a clay sculpture, it did not really bring them any hope, yet they were already fighting over it like this. If there were really any benefits, then it would be just like yesterday's chaos. Oomph. Xiaohua snorted coldly and was just about to speak. However, he heard a loud and clear voice speak before Xiaohua could say anything. "How dare you? This is the dojo of my Taoist god. I would like to see which one of you doesn't want to live anymore and dares to anger the god. It doesn't matter if you don't want to live, but don't let the god's anger land on Longevity Town, General Ridge, and Liao Jiang." Xiaohua was startled and looked at the main hall with some disbelief. Xiao Jian, who was cowardly and fearfully shrinking back just now, actually stepped over a screaming fisherman and stood in front of Yuanya as he said coldly. The fishermen were somewhat unruly. Just when they heard the old man's command, the dozen or so well-built fishermen all wanted to pounce towards the main hall. However, Xiao Jian's cold words were like a sudden clap of thunder that struck their heads, instantly scaring them. "You are all originally pious people. Today, you came to worship Lord Sea God. Lord Sea God is also very happy." Seeing that the group of fishermen were temporarily frightened, Xiao Jian hurriedly said, "But now, you dare to behave atrociously in front of Lord Sea God. Do you still have Lord Sea God in your eyes? Since you dare to make a move in front of Lord Sea God, how can you say that you believe in Lord Sea God? Since you don't believe in Lord Sea God, how can he accept your offerings? Although these three animals are extremely revered, how could they have the slightest bit of weight in the face of your disrespect? Even if you offer 10 offerings and reconstruct your golden bodies 10 times, you still won't be able to obtain Lord Sea God's gift." Hearing Xiao Jian's short words, not only did the expressions of all the fishermen change, even the old fisherman who spoke viciously was greatly shocked. "That's right, today I came to worship Lord Sea God. If I were to make a move here, how can I be considered to be worshiping? Since I'm not worshiping, then wouldn't everything today be in vain? Lord Sea God, please forgive our mistakes. We are all people who deserve to die. I hope that your mercy will exempt us from the disrespect in our hearts." There were already a few women and children who were trembling with fear. They threw themselves onto the ground in front of the main hall and started crying. How could the fishermen who were about to make a move still move? They hurriedly shrank back and stole a glance at the old fisherman. The old fisherman clenched his teeth. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Jian beat him to it. "You are my Taoist disciples, so you don't understand my Taoist rules at all. Let's not talk about the thousands of titles of the gods we worship. Even I, other than my original name, have different titles like Taoist Xiao and wanderer tranquil. If I were to succeed in my cultivation one day, perhaps even a holy name would descend. Therefore, Lord Sea God is Taoist Shao, and Taoist Shao is also Lord Sea God. By the way, this old benefactor, I want to ask you, what did Lord Sea God call himself that day? Has he ever appeared in front of you? The old fisherman originally wanted to say something, but his words were immediately choked by Taoist Shao. He opened his mouth, but was unable to say anything. If I'm not wrong, Lord Sea God should have appeared before. Even all of you have seen his heroic bearing. Taoist Shao continued. However, we don't have the immortal lifespan of gods, so how can we remember so clearly? Even if our ancestors knew that Lord Sea God was Taoist Shao when it was passed down to our generation, his name had long been forgotten. I can't help but say that Taoist Shao appeared at the River Tide Temple 2 days ago and scolded us for forgetting him and cutting off his family line. Plop! The old fisherman didn't dare to say another word. His knees went soft, and he knelt on the ground again. Damn it! Xiao Hua at the side couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Taoist Zhao's serious face, he thought to himself, this Xiao Jian is definitely not an ordinary person. With a few simple words, he was able to convince these irascible fishermen and force them to kneel down. Truly amazing. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. Could it be that what this guy said before and those stories are all true? Xiao Hua's impression of Xiao Jian wasn't particularly good. He felt that Xiao Jian's mouth was full of nonsense and slippery. Therefore, he only believed half of what Xiao Jian said. Now, looking at Xiao Jian's appearance, he was somewhat pensive. Just when Xiao Hua was admiring, he suddenly saw a strange expression appear on Taoist Zhao's incomparably pious face. Taoist Zhao's 2 eyes were blinking at him, as if he wanted to say something to him. Oh! Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and immediately opened his mouth. Oomph! An extremely cold voice floated above the main hall of the River Tide Temple. Ouch! At the same time, in the River Tide Temple, other than Taoist Shao and Yuanya, everyone held their heads with one hand, and a painful expression appeared on their faces as they wailed with all their might. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.